Chapter 601. A purplish-black portal suddenly appeared beside 16 knights, and Wuming walked out of it. Vilo, Sama. Letitia looked at Wuming gratefully and bowed. Thank you for everything you've done for me. Wuming walked in front of Letitia and rubbed her head. I didn't do anything. If you want to thank someone, thank 16 knights. Your return depended on him. Hey bro, are you making fun of me? Hearing Wuming's words, 16 knights suddenly shouted in a bad mood. Although I have other ways, I've only contributed a little in this matter. Let's just go through the motions. After all, if it wasn't for Wuming, then Luos definitely wouldn't have started the gift competition. And even without 16 knights, there was still Jiufei Niao and Kasuga Hiroyuki to win the gift competition, not to mention that Wuming himself could participate. What credit, if it's mine, no one can take it away. But if it's not mine, then I definitely won't take it away. 16 Knights' evil aesthetic was fully exposed. By the way, since Vilo, Sama already took Perseus, why not just transfer me to No Name? Why do you still want to have a gift competition? Letitia complained. This was simply Wuming giving his own things as a prize for the gift competition that his community participated in. It was very strange in itself. However, Wuming shook his head at Letitia's complaint. It's not the same, Letitia. Although Wuming was also a member of No Name, donating his own things to the community felt like giving alms. Although Letitia might become Wuming's possession again, moreover, the limelight had been stolen by Wuming alone this time. No matter what, they had to give the others a chance to perform. Although Jiufei Niao and Kasuga Hiroyuki still didn't appear, and the most important thing was, we still have to rely on this gift competition to establish our prestige, blonde lowly, 16 Knights said rudely to Letitia. Only then did Letitia remember that she had ruined No Name's plan to build up its reputation. I'm really sorry, everyone. Letitia bowed to everyone guiltily. Then, Wuming flicked her head. But it's fine as long as the result is good. Wuming smiled as he looked at Letitia, who was crouching down with tears in her eyes due to the pain in her head. Although he knew that Letitia might be a few hundred years old, she was still a cute creature. Speaking of which, what happened to the plan? Wuming looked at Ren. This time, Mr. 16 Knights performed very well. Coincidentally, he also met the subordinates of the high-level Demon King in the gift competition. He successfully made a name for himself. At this moment, Ren acted like a leader and was quite calm. All in all, the plan was a great success. Hee hee. 16th Knights raised his arm to show his victory. Well, it's fine as long as the plan is completed. Wuming shrugged his shoulders. Actually, Wuming didn't know what the gift competition was about. Wuming only told Luos to play according to the original game. But even so, Wuming still dared to let 16th Knights participate in the gift competition. This was the so-called trust. Wuming believed that 16th Knights could win, and 16th Knights didn't disappoint Wuming. Not to mention, 16th Knights also met the subordinates of the high-level Demon King in the box court, which really made No Name famous. However, since there were high-level people participating in the gift competition, it seemed like Letitia's identity wasn't ordinary. Wuming looked at Letitia, who was still rubbing her forehead with tears in her eyes, and was once again struck by her cuteness. Shaking his head, Wuming threw the question of Letitia's identity to the back of his mind and started the main topic. I just went to Byakuya's place to ask about some things. Wuming's expression began to become serious, which made Komodo Asuka and Hiroi Hiroyuki stop teasing Black Rabbit and become serious. Now, Letitia, I'll give you 3 choices. Wuming looked at Letitia. First, become my dependent, and share my honor and disgrace, but the price is to become my person. Second, accept my blessing, but the price is to receive another blessing every once in a while, and the process may be very cruel for you. Third, don't accept the above two proposals, give up becoming my dependent, and give up receiving my blessing. Wu Ming briefly finished the three choices. Although it was brief, it was easy to understand, and there was no one present who didn't understand. But Letitia was puzzled. But, Vilo, Salma, didn't you say that after I return to No Name, you will let me accept your power and become the guardian of No Name? This seemed to be different from what he said at the beginning. Of course, it wasn't that Letitia was calculative, but she was puzzled by the third choice Wu Ming gave her. If the first and second choices were to choose the way to obtain power, then the third choice was to let Letitia give up. Letitia didn't understand Wu Ming's intention. After Letitia asked this question, the scene fell into silence. Because of this silent atmosphere, even Black Rabbit didn't dare to rub her rabbit ears. After a moment, Wu Ming sighed. It's actually like this, Letitia. Then, Wu Ming told Letitia the reason. In other words, you can't find a way for me to recover my strength and obtain godhood for the time being, but you don't want me to bear your shackles, so you gave me three choices. Letitia concluded Wu Ming's words. But, Letitia smiled. You're really gentle, Mr. Vilo. Gentle. Gentle. Wu Ming was surprised. He didn't think he was gentle, Wu Ming just didn't want Letitia to sell him to Wu Ming without knowing why. But it seemed to be a little gentle, cough cough. In short, you can choose the third choice, but you don't have to worry, I will see if I can help you find your godhood in the future and restore your strength. But, Letitia directly rejected. No need, Mr. Vilo. Then, Letitia looked firmly at Wu Ming's eyes that were the same color as hers. I choose the first choice. Become my dependent. But you have to know, if you become my dependent, there is a high possibility that there is no way to remove it. At least Wu Ming tried to see if he could remove it. Then, Mr. Wu Ming, if I become your dependent, I won't be able to stay in No Name. Of course not, the disadvantage is that you will be branded with my mark and share my life, it won't affect you in any other way. Wu Ming shook his head. Then, Wu Ming looked at Ren, Black Rabbit, and the others. What about you guys, don't you object to Letitia's decision? But, they all shook their heads in response to Wu Ming. Even if we are companions, we will respect Letitia Senpai's choice. Black Rabbit looked indignant. Black Rabbit is right, our companions chose the right path, we have no right to stop them. Ren added. I didn't do anything this time, I won't say anything. Zhou Yuanfei crossed her arms and sat on the sofa. Same. Haruai Toshi nodded and sat down with Zhou Yuanfei. Finally, Wu Ming looked at 16th Knights. Hey, what are you looking at me for? I don't care about such troublesome things. 16th Knights had a whatever you want look. After sighing, Wu Ming finally looked at Letitia. Letitia, you might not understand the importance of becoming my dependent, come here. Wu Ming gestured at Letitia. Letitia obediently walked over. Then, Wu Ming squatted down and pressed his forehead against Letitia's. Instantly, Wu Ming passed the description of dependent's ability to Letitia. After a moment, Wu Ming stood up and looked at Letitia again. I see, is that what Vilo Senpai meant? Letitia nodded thoughtfully. Then, do you still have the option to continue, Letitia? But, Letitia smiled. Yes. Looking around at everyone, then looking at Letitia, Wu Ming sighed. If that's the case, then so be it. Wu Ming squatted down again and smiled at Letitia. It's too late to regret, my dependent. But Letitia smiled back. Yes, my master. Chapter 602. There wasn't much fancy light, Wu Ming and Letitia just held hands and the contract ceremony was over. Is it over? Black Rabbit stared at Wu Ming and Letitia curiously with her big rabbit eyes. Ren was also curious. As for the three problem children, although they were not as obvious as Black Rabbit and Wren, Wu-Ming still noticed their curious gazes. At that moment, Wu-Ming could only smile helplessly. What do you want to see? A dazzling magic array. Shi Feng shrugged as he walked over to the sofa and sat down. Letitia also followed Wu-Ming over, but she did not sit down with him. Instead, she stood behind Wu-Ming. She was completely treating herself as Wu-Ming's dependent. Well, Letitia, although you are still my dependent, you don't have to always follow me. Nominally, you are still a companion of no name. Wu-Ming corrected Letitia's thoughts. However, Letitia was more stubborn than Wu-Ming imagined. But master, you are indeed my master, aren't you? Letitia feels that there is nothing wrong with serving master. Letitia smiled slightly. I am a member of no name, but before that, I am master's dependent. This made Wu-Ming somewhat helpless. Wu-Ming always felt that his dependent incarnation had the intention of brainwashing. However, Wu-Ming's thoughts were not wrong. After all, this was an ability evolved from the combination of two gods' authority and Wu-Ming's own power. How could it be as simple as a contract? Once a contract was signed with Wu-Ming, whether it was forced or voluntary, this contract would subtly make the dependent who signed the contract truly become Wu-Ming's person. Whether it was physically or mentally. Well, after all, Mr. Villo has already become Senior Letitia's main god. I think Senior Letitia's approach is not wrong. Black Rabbit smiled. It didn't matter what it was, as long as their companions could be together with everyone in no name, safe and sound. This was Black Rabbit's simple and greedy way of thinking. Lord God or whatever, you can't actually say that. No, forget it, just think of it that way. Holding on to the idea that the more he explained, the messier it would get, Wu-Ming simply allowed the Black Rabbit to fantasize. It was fine as long as it did not cause any harm. I am quite envious of you, little brother. Now you have a blonde lowly maid, I would like to try it. 16 Knights jokingly said enviously. However, 16's words made Letitia's eyes slightly lit up. It was not only Letitia's interest, but Haru's interest as well. You don't say, I haven't enjoyed being served by a blonde maid before. He had to admit that Distant Bird was indeed a young mistress. It seemed like she had quite a few maids at home envious. Haru's face was, who was a fake who was a who was a who was a who was and who was who. I have received service from many people, and I have even received service from people of other races. Wu-Ming said as if he was reminiscing. In Connaught, although Wu-Ming was Maeve's guard, in that place where the strong were respected, Wu-Ming was still very respected. In Camelot, as an extremely senior knight, Wu-Ming also had many servants. In Uruk, Wu-Ming had become a god, so naturally, the service would not be less. Wu-Ming's entire Nizhalic was Wu-Ming's, so naturally, he had many subordinates. Wu-Ming in the God Slayer's world was also treated as a king, and Wu-Ming in Rick's world also had a group of skywing species. Thinking about it this way, was Wu-Ming actually a person of the bourgeoisie? Oh. Then have you ever received service from a blonde maid? Haru asked with interest. As expected of a young mistress, she really was an evil bourgeoisie. Asterisk, although I don't have a blonde maid, I do have a blonde female knight in another world. Wu-Ming thought of Erica, who was also a young mistress like Haru. Speaking of which, she is also a young mistress of a European noble family. A noble female knight. Letitia's eyes turned cold. Letitia emitted a slightly terrifying aura. Wu-Ming was stunned, but he immediately reacted. As a vampire, Letitia was known as a knight of the box court. In this way, her attributes were duplicated. Golden-haired, noble, knight, and silent subordinates. This made Letitia a little unhappy. Cough. But she didn't become my dependent. She only serves me in name. When Wu Ming said this, Letitia's terrifying aura dissipated. I'm sorry, Master, your power is a little too strong, I can't control it for the time being. Letitia bowed to Wu Ming and apologized. Just the fluctuation of her emotions caused a change in her aura. It was enough to show that Letitia's strength had recovered. Senior Letitia, are you really okay? Do you need to rest? Black Rabbit looked at Letitia with slight worry. There were also drawbacks to suddenly obtaining great power. It meant that she was not proficient in controlling it. There's no need, Black Rabbit, I'm just not used to it, I'll be fine after a while. Letitia expressed that she wanted to stay by Wu Ming's side. At this time, Wu Ming spoke. Since Letitia doesn't want to, then don't force it. After all, after becoming Wu Ming's dependent, Letitia was like a spring resurrection, she did not look weak at all. Speaking of which, little brother, your blonde loli is really interesting. 16 Knights looked at Letitia with fighting spirit. Obviously, Letitia had aroused 16 Knights' interest in the strong. Speaking of strength, Wu Ming wanted to ask something. Right, Letitia, how was your strength before? Wu Ming looked at Letitia behind him. My strength before? If I didn't lose my quintessence, I would be in the 4 digits. Letitia thought and responded to Wu Ming. 4 digits, ha. Wu Ming nodded. In Wu Ming's opinion, 16 Knights' strength should also be in the 4 digits. And now, after becoming Wu Ming's dependent, Letitia's strength should have returned to the 4 digits. In short, it should not be worse than before. Oh, interesting, to be able to have a blonde noble in the 4 digits be your maid, little brother, you're really lucky. 16 Knights laughed and teased. And I need a lot of people to serve me. Haruai Toshi said lightly. It seems that your experience is more interesting than we thought. Jio Yuki said with interest. Jio Yuki's words also got Haruai Toshi's agreement. Agreed, I want to hear the Villo's story from before. The story from before. Wu Ming thought for a while. There was nothing important at the moment, so it was not impossible to talk about it. Then, Wu Ming looked at everyone's interested faces and smiled. Well, in that case, I'll talk about my story. Chapter 603. Everyone sat around the coffee table in the meeting room, listening to Wu Ming telling his story. Then. Did you really defeat the last king? Didn't you say that he's immortal? Jiao Fei now leaned forward like a child, looking at Wu Ming in anticipation. Although Rama is immortal, it doesn't mean that he can keep fighting. I'll just beat him back to his original form. Wu Ming shrugged. Original form. Black Rabbit was shocked. Could a god be beaten back to his original form? Wu Ming smiled helplessly as he noticed Black Rabbit's shock. The original form I'm talking about is his weapon, the Savior Divine Sword. Since he's the last king, the hero, the gods gave him an amalgamation of countless god relics. That's the Savior Divine Sword, Wu Ming said and waved his hand. A sacred sword appeared in Wu Ming's hand. It was the Savior Divine Sword. However, since Wu Ming was in his spiritual form, the Savior Divine Sword was not the real thing. Instead, it was the spirit of the Savior Divine Sword. Just like a servant's relic, it was not a physical relic. Instead, it was an amalgamation of powerful magic. The Savior Divine Sword was just like that. If someone defeats him, he'll return to the Savior Divine Sword. When he returned to the Savior Divine Sword, I replaced him and squeezed Rama out of it. Everyone gathered around the Savior Divine Sword immediately. It's really a powerful weapon. Ren looked at the sacred sword in Wu Ming's hand in all seriousness. He could feel a powerful pressure from the sword. You squeezed Rama out of it. I'm really curious how you did it. Jiu Fei now tapped the savior divine sword softly. Wu Ming smiled helplessly. That's just a metaphor. I've just replaced Rama as the last king. If that's the case, aren't you a god? 16 Knights put his hands in his pockets. Actually, I have been one for a long time. Wu Ming stared at 16th Knights with his dead fish eyes. Although Wu Ming had only told the story of the Godslayer world, he had also told everyone about the god of disobedience and the parallel world. After all, if Wu Ming were to bump into someone like Romo in the courtyard, it would be awkward if he didn't know who that person was. Wu Ming also told everyone that he had once been worshipped as a god. Yes, Lord Ghost Deity. 16 Knights waved his hand casually, looking rather perfunctory. By the way, Villo, since you've obtained the Blade of Salvation, did you inherit the godly equipment as well? Jiu Yuanfei asked as he toyed with the Blade of Salvation. In response, Wu Ming smiled. Of course, I won't return those divine artifacts to the gods of that parallel world. As Wu Ming spoke, he tossed the Blade of Salvation away gently. In an instant, the Blade of Salvation flew behind Wu Ming and disintegrated in the air. In the next moment, the space behind Wu Ming fluctuated and the outline of a square appeared. Then, a phalanx containing all kinds of weapons with golden hair and ancient auras appeared behind Silent Blade. Everyone was stunned. Judging from the ancient and powerful aura, they were sure that those divine artifacts were authentic. However, there was a trace of strangeness to these genuine goods, as if they were mirages. That was because the Blade of Salvation was a spiritual body. Even the weapons in the mandala square formation were spiritual bodies. Wu Ming felt that he was becoming more and more like a hero spirit. His body, relic, and everything else were similar. Of course, as long as he could find his original body, everything would be fine. Maybe it's because the last king is Rama. The storage space created by the gods is similar to the mandala square formation, Wu Ming said as he put away the mandala square formation. My master is really an incredible person, Letitia, who was sitting beside Wu Ming, said with a smile. After all, Wu Ming took a long time to tell the story. Hence, in the middle of the story, Wu Ming asked Letitia to sit down. I'm grateful for everything that I've encountered. It's because of those stories that my life is so fulfilling. Wu Ming's open-mindedness made the members of No Name look at Wu Ming in a new light. Are you an imposter? Jiu Yuanfei squinted her eyes. Why? Why do you say that? Wu Ming asked awkwardly as he did not understand. The Villo is obviously a problematic child. How could a problematic child say something like that? Haruhi Yoshi nodded. That's why, little brother, you have to learn from us. 16 Knights spread out his hands with an arrogant expression on his face. Then, 3 slapping sounds were heard. Slap. 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 Black Rabbit took a paper fan and hit 16 Knights, Asuhibe Yoshi, and Yoshi's heads. The 3 of you are problematic children. Although Mr. Villo is slightly problematic, compared to the 3 of you, Mr. Villo is much more stable. Don't lead him astray. Black Rabbit looked at the 3 problematic children angrily with a paper fan, warning them not to lead Wu Ming astray. Wu Ming touched his nose in embarrassment. Then, the 3 problematic children answered Black Rabbit with a smile. Don't worry, we'll definitely take action against the Villo. You 3 problematic children. Ah! Black Rabbit was going crazy. Then, Ren, the good guy, started to mediate between them. He stopped watching Black Rabbit and the other 3's farce and looked at the sky outside. Unknowingly, it's already so late. Wu Ming said faintly. The sky outside was already dark, and the sun had already set. As Wu Ming's wife, Letitia spoke. Indeed, Master, your story is very fascinating. Lily came here once before, but because she saw that Master was so interested in your story, she left on her own. Oh. Lily came before. I'm sorry, Wuming said apologetically. The Lily that Wuming and Letitia were talking about was the oldest child besides Ren. She was a cute half-beast loli. The 3 meals for the contestants in No Name were basically prepared by Lily. Previously, when Lily came to look for them, it was probably to invite them to eat. However, because everyone was too engrossed in Wu Ming's story, it was delayed. Alright, it's already very late. Lily and the others must be waiting anxiously. Let's hurry over. After stopping the farce between Black Rabbit and the problematic children, everyone left the meeting room and went to the cafeteria. Somewhere in the forest that belonged to the end of the world. Glea and the unknown girl were brought to a cave by the unkillable Maxwell. Just as they reached the entrance of the cave, 2 figures walked out. A man with a cloak, whose face could not be seen clearly, and judging from his height, he looked like a 10-year-old child. A woman with a similar cloak and a golden harp, whose face could not be seen clearly, walked out. The woman walked beside the boy, and it was obvious who was in the dominant position. Did something happen? The boy asked. As soon as the boy spoke, Glea and the girl bowed their heads respectfully. Sorry, Your Highness, we met his soul. The girl who was stabbed by Wuming lowered her head and said guiltily. If it's him, it's not strange that you're not his match. Being able to escape from him with just a little injury is already very good. His Highness seemed to know about Wuming's strength, so he did not blame the girl. Then, His Highness looked at Maxwell. Thank you, Maxwell. If it weren't for you this time, Ling and Elder Gu would be in trouble. However, in the face of His Highness' gratitude, Maxwell did not seem to appreciate it. I'm just following orders. It's better to be careful in the future. After all, even if I were to face him, it wouldn't be so easy to deal with him. Maxwell said casually. He still remembered that his body was shattered by Wuming's blow. If it weren't for his special body, he would have died long ago. His Highness did not say anything about Maxwell's disrespect. Ignoring the issue of position, after all, Glea and Ling were able to come back this time because of him. Your Highness, what should we do next? The woman beside His Highness asked. His Highness smiled casually. Isn't that Demon King going to collect companions? I have a feeling that No Name will definitely go against her. We just have to wait and see. Glea, Ling, and the black-robed woman replied respectfully. Yes. Only Maxwell did not respond to His Highness. However, His Highness was used to it. However, being used to it did not mean that he could tolerate it. Chapter 604. Wuming's time in the box court didn't pass slowly. After Letitia's gift competition ended, Wuming acted as if he was living in the library. If he had nothing to do, he would stay in the no-name underground library, flipping through books to supplement his knowledge. Ren and 16 Knights would also come to the library from time to time. The former wanted to increase her knowledge as a community leader, while the latter was simply interested in books. It had to be said that 16 Knights was surprisingly smart. As a result, the male core members of No Name became friends of the library. As for Jo Yuasuka, Haruai Hiroyuki, Black Rabbit, Letitia, and the other women, when they had nothing to do, they would chat and have tea parties. And when they had nothing to do, they would participate in the gift competition. By the way, 16 Knights and Ren were the same. After all, the two of them came to the library to read in their free time. They weren't like Wuming, who almost treated the library as his home. Because they showed off their skills in the gift competition held by Perseus with Letitia as the prize, they also made a name for themselves. Although no one came to join No Name, now, No Name wasn't a community that everyone looked down on. At the very least, No Name changed from the No Name that was invaded by the Demon King to the No Name that has some ability in the name of defeating the Demon King. No matter what, it was better than not having anything. The three problem children participated in various gift competitions because of their interest. As the community leader, Ren also participated in a few gift competitions that weren't too difficult, but she spent most of her time in the library with Wuming. As for Black Rabbit, she continued to do the work provided by White Yiksha, acting as a referee to earn money for the community. Although Wuming sold Perseus after Letitia's gift competition, because the No Name people thought that it was Wuming's private property, they rejected Wuming's unconditional gift and chose to borrow it. In fact, it was mainly the three problem children who were making a ruckus. Words like, "I don't accept charity," and "I'm ashamed of it," kept coming out of his mouth. This made Rinha Black Rabbit subtly reject Wuming's donations. Left with no choice, Wuming could only use the excuse of borrowing to lend most of the money from Perseus to No Name. Thanks to this, No Name's food became better. After all, the money that Wuming lent to No Name was half of the assets of Perseus after the sale of Perseus. A community that was originally worth 5 figures was worth a lot of money. But why was it only half of his assets? Cough, cough. After all, Wuming was also short of money. Although Wuming could sell some of his treasures for a good price, he had to keep the good stuff for himself. And now, the situation had turned into a situation where Black Rabbit was working hard to earn money for Wuming, its creditor. Even if it was its partner's money, Black Rabbit would not take it for granted. It was not strange for it to work hard to earn money to repay Wuming. Actually, the most important thing was Black Rabbit's race. The Moon Rabbit was a race that sacrificed and contributed. This kind of freeloading made the Black Rabbit feel a deep sense of guilt. Wuming could not say anything, so he could only let Black Rabbit do whatever it wanted. However, there was one thing worth celebrating. Black Rabbit finally did not have to sell its body to earn money. It listened to White Yiksha and changed into specific clothes. Its reward for being a judge would be doubled. White Yiksha was angry for a few days because of this. Wuming once again took out some good stuff to share with White Yiksha. Only then did White Yiksha stop throwing a tantrum. Wuming could not help but doubt White Yiksha's integrity. All in all, No Name had begun to prosper. In the morning, Wuming woke up from his sleep. The first thing he did when he opened his eyes was to look at the sunlight outside the window. Although Wuming looked like he was going to live in the library, that was only a metaphor. Wuming was still living in the room he had chosen. What a nice weather. Wuming stretched and slowly sat up from the bed. That's why, Master, don't stay in the library anymore. Go out for a walk and participate in some gift competitions. Letitia's distressed voice came from Wuming's room. Wuming did not find it strange that Letitia was in his room because Wuming had basically spent his days in No Name like this. Wuming went from not adapting on the first day to being casual now. It could only be said that time really changed a person. 16 nights and the others are enough. I'd better read honestly, Wuming said casually. However, it's still better to go out for a walk. Even as a ghost, I can't stand staying in the library for a long time. While speaking, Wuming looked at where Letitia was. Then, Wuming, who was staring at Letitia's figure, did not know whether to laugh or cry. At that moment, Letitia had removed her red jacket and replaced it with a blue and white lowly maid outfit. By the way, on the first day that Letitia became Wuming's dependent, she had appeared in Wuming's room dressed like this. Otherwise, with Wuming's temperament, how could he not adapt to having a girl in his room in the morning? The thing he was most uncomfortable with was Letitia's maid outfit. Although I have asked many times, Letitia, I still can't help but ask, as my dependent, why do you have to wear a maid outfit? Wuming asked, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Then, although this subordinate has answered master many times, this subordinate will still answer you that this is the necessary equipment to serve master. Listening to Letitia's serious lowly voice and looking at Letitia's serious lowly face, Wuming really didn't know whether to laugh or cry. In Wuming's view, Letitia was definitely interested in the maid that 16 Knights said before. Although I don't like maid outfits, in order to better serve master, this subordinate deliberately endured the humiliation and chose to wear this outfit, Letitia said seriously. However, in Wuming's view, Letitia was completely enjoying it. However, Wuming had given up struggling. Anyway, Letitia wearing a maid outfit was not bad, just treat it as eye candy. Shaking his head, Wuming moved his body and prepared to get off the bed. Master, do you need to wash up? Letitia was really like a maid, asking Wuming. Same old rules, Wuming said casually. Letitia nodded, then Letitia's shadow floated, and some toiletries appeared. Wuming was not surprised by this scene. Because Letitia had been serving Wuming since the beginning, and Wuming was used to it. After a few minutes, Wuming finished washing up, then under Letitia's service, Wuming walked out of the room. As soon as he opened the door, Wuming saw an acquaintance. Oh, you're finally up. Chapter 605. Flying Bird. Wuming was slightly surprised. That's right, the person that Wuming saw when he opened the door was one of the 3 problem children, Zhou Yuanfei. At this moment, Flying Bird was wearing a red dress that Black Rabbit helped to modify. She crossed her arms and looked at Wuming. It seemed like she had been waiting for Wuming for a long time. What a surprise, you actually came looking for me. It wasn't that their relationship was bad, but because Zhou Yuanfei usually worked with the girls. When she was with Wuming and the other boys, it was always a scene where everyone was present. Just like now, Zhou Yuanfei came looking for Wuming alone, which really surprised Wuming. What's there to be surprised about? I naturally came looking for you for something. Zhou Yuanfei raised her eyebrows and said unhappily. But just as Zhou Yuanfei finished speaking, her stomach growled. Rumble, this made Zhou Yuanfei's face instantly turn red. Wuming and Letitia looked at each other and smiled. Then Wuming opened his mouth. You haven't eaten yet, right? Let's talk as we walk. Zhou Yuanfei nodded. Wuming and Zhou Yuanfei walked side by side. The maid Letitia followed behind Wuming. On the way to the no-name cafeteria, Wuming asked Zhou Yuanfei why she was here. Then, why did you come looking for me? But Zhou Yuanfei was a little dissatisfied with Wuming. You rascal, didn't you say that after the matter with Letitia was over, we would study my gift together? Did you forget? Zhou Yuanfei pouted. Wuming's body slightly paused, then Wuming smiled at Zhou Yuanfei. How? How could I forget? It's just that these 2 days I was a little addicted to the books in the library. Actually, I decided not to go to the library today. I was going to look for you. Wuming answered Zhou Yuanfei awkwardly. Letitia can testify for me. I really did decide not to go to the library today, right Letitia? Wuming looked at Letitia and gave her a look. This made Letitia not knowing whether to laugh or cry. But no matter what, this was her master, she still had to give her some face. Miss Flying Bird, master really did decide not to go to the library today. Although he didn't want to go look for you. But this was something that Letitia would definitely not say. I'll believe you for now. Zhou Yuan Flying Bird did not say anything else. However, she wasn't stupid enough to believe that Letitia was Wuming's subordinate. She was just giving Wuming face. After breakfast, Wuming and Zhou Yuanfei came to a wasteland in no name. Beside them, Letitia, 16 Knights, Haruai Hiroyuki, Black Rabbit, Ren, and the others. Even the little fox girl Lily came. At that moment, Wu Ming cursed helplessly. I say, why is everyone here? The one who answered Wu Ming turned back to 16 Knights with interest. Isn't it obvious? Little brother, how could we miss out on something as interesting as researching gifts? 16 Knights' words made Haruai Hiroyuki nod in agreement. Black Rabbit, because I don't have work today. I heard that Miss Flying Bird and Mr. Villo are researching gifts, so I came. Black Rabbit smiled and touched his head. I. Ren stuttered as he tried to explain, but Wu Ming interrupted him. Okay, I'm not blaming you. There's no need to find a reason. If you want to see it, just come. Wu Ming shook his head. Then, Wu Ming looked at Zhou Yuanfei. Then, let's begin, Flying Bird. Okay. Zhou Yuanfei nodded. But, what should I do? Zhou Yuanfei asked. Although it was researching gifts, how should she research her aura? That's easy. Wu Ming smiled. Isn't your gift domination? If I'm not wrong, you haven't tried to dominate inanimate objects. Because of her dislike of the gift of domination, Zhou Yuanfei tried not to use it. After hearing Wu Ming's words, Zhou Yuanfei nodded. Zhou Yuanfei had no choice but to use domination on inanimate objects. Needless to say, Zhou Yuanfei wouldn't use domination on inanimate objects. Then, you can try domination on inanimate objects. After Wu Ming said that, he snapped his fingers. A sword that looked exactly like the divine blade of salvation, or rather, Excalibur, appeared in Wu Ming's hand. This is a fake holy sword that I created using magic. When you say its name, it can release a shockwave of light. As he said that, Wu Ming threw the sword at Zhou Yuanfei. Miss Flying Bird. Facing such a sharp weapon, everyone was shocked. Black Rabbit even shouted. Not only was the crowd shocked, even Miss Zhao Feinyao was shocked. Stop! As if his words were a law, the fake holy sword that Wu Ming threw out wobbled and stopped in the air. Then, as if the words of a bird were too weak, the fake holy sword only stopped for a moment before it fell to the ground and stuck firmly in the ground. At the same time, Zhou Yuanfei showed a tired expression. It seemed like Zhou Yuanfei was not able to control inanimate objects well. She still lacked training. However, this was also related to the object that she controlled. Although the fake holy sword was a fake, it was still a holy sword. At most, it could be considered a temporary holy sword. Wu Ming guessed that Zhou Yuanfei, who did not train herself, would not be able to control the fake holy sword well. Just as Wu Ming was thinking, Zhou Yuanfei opened her mouth angrily. What are you doing? It's too dangerous. Zhou Yuanfei put one hand on her waist and pointed at the fake holy sword in front of her as she angrily said to Wu Ming. Obviously, if Zhou Yuanfei did not control the holy sword would have landed on Zhou Yuanfei's head. Sorry. That was also to test your ability. After all, a person's potential will only explode in danger, right? Wu Ming apologized sincerely. Although humans were such animals, Wu Ming's actions still made Zhou Yuanfei unhappy. However, a serious expression appeared on Wu Ming's face. Although that is the case, I will definitely not let my comrades get hurt. If you did not stop that sword, I would have destroyed it before it landed. Silent Bird's words about not letting his companions get hurt made Zhou Yuan Flying Bird feel a little better. If you are in danger next time, I will not let you get hurt as well. Consider this as me owing you a favor. Wu Ming smiled. Then it's a deal. Zhou Yuanfei looked as if she had taken advantage of him. Then, what should we do next? However, Wu Ming's next words shocked everyone. Pick up that fake holy sword and attack me, Yuanfei. Chapter 606. Flying Bird was surprised. Black Rabbit's surprised voice was even louder than Jiufei's. Will there be any danger, Villo? Black Rabbit was worried. Even though the three problem children would tease Black Rabbit from time to time after coming to this world, and Black Rabbit was also quite angry, Black Rabbit had never been angry from the bottom of her heart. Because they were companions, Black Rabbit's companions. Black Rabbit did not want to see her companions get hurt. Even if she had to sacrifice herself for her companions, Black Rabbit was not willing to let her companions get hurt. Otherwise, why would nothing happen to Black Rabbit every time she attacked the three problem children? It was because Black Rabbit did not want to attack at all. Then, Wuming was the same to Black Rabbit. She did not want to see him get hurt either. At this time, Letitia pulled Black Rabbit's skirt. "Don't worry, Black Rabbit." Letitia smiled confidently. "Master is very strong. A mere fake holy sword won't be able to hurt him." As a dependent who obtained Wuming's power, Letitia was the most qualified to say this. "Don't worry, Black Rabbit. I'm not mocking Flying Bird. She doesn't have the ability to hurt you now." Although it was arrogant, it was the truth. Jiufei's gift was not effective on Wuming. Even with this fake holy sword made by Wuming, it was still unknown whether it could hurt Wuming. However, Wuming's taunt caused the word Jing to appear above Zhou Yuan Flying Bird's head. His originally hesitant heart immediately became firm. Her good mood also became bad. After all, no matter who was called weak, that person would not be happy. Being angry was the least of it, even if the other party did not mean to mock. "You said it, Villo. I won't take responsibility if you get hurt." Jiufei's little face puffed up as she angrily pulled out the fake holy sword from the ground. The holy sword's heavy weight made Jiufei's delicate body wobble. She almost lost her balance. However, this was something that Wuming was happy to see. If Jiufei didn't want to do it, it would give Wuming a headache. "No problem. Bring it on." Wuming smiled warmly. However, to Jiufei now, this smile seemed to be mocking her. If Wuming knew what distant Flying Bird was thinking, he would have cried out that he had been wronged. He was only interested in what distant Flying Bird's gift would do to the fake holy sword. The holy sword's real name is Excalibur. Excalibur. You just have to raise the holy sword and shout its real name at me before slashing down, Wuming kindly reminded. Excalibur. Kazuhito was shocked. King Arthur's sacred sword, huh? The Villo sure is an interesting friend. As if to explain their surprise, Haruai's eyes lit up. However, Laetitia and 16th Knights didn't show any difference. Laetitia was used to her master being too strong, while 16th Knights was thinking about the Excalibur that Wuming mentioned. King Arthur. 16th Knights narrowed his eyes and looked at Wuming. Jiufei now looked at the holy sword and nodded. Understood. Jiufei now said and raised the fake holy sword. Instantly, the scene fell into silence. Including Laetitia and the others who were watching, no one made a sound. A gentle breeze blew by and caressed Wuming's short hair. It also blew Jiufei Niao's long hair. Kazuhito, Ren, and Lily couldn't help but swallow their saliva. They were quite nervous. On the other hand, Laetitia, Haruai, and 16th Knights didn't show anything. No, 16th Knight's smile should be said to be quite tyrannical. In the next second, the wind stopped. As if it was a signal, Jiufei Niao's eyes trembled. She opened her mouth and shouted the holy sword's real name. Excalibur. Jiufei Niao's spiritual words seemed to be attached to the holy sword. The holy sword emitted a dazzling light. The holy sword emitted a light that couldn't be seen clearly. Not only that, the holy sword was still absorbing magic from the surrounding air. More and more light gathered on the holy sword. Perhaps it was because it was the first time that Jiu Fei Niao was controlling an inanimate object. The power gathered on the holy sword was unprecedentedly strong. The light stunned Wu Ming. This is already comparable to a real holy sword. Black Rabbit and the others were also attracted by the light of the fake holy sword. So pretty. Lily wagged her foxtail, her eyes sparkling like little stars. This power. Jiu Fei now looked at the holy sword she was holding hesitantly. She was afraid that the light was too strong. It was so strong that it might accidentally kill Wu Ming. Seeing Jiu Fei Niao's hesitation, Wu Ming shouted loudly. Fei Niao, attack me with all your strength. That way, I can analyze how much your gift has improved this fake holy sword. Although that was what he said, Wu Ming could more or less guess the use of Jiu Fei Niao's gift. Jiu Fei Niao nodded. Not only because of Wu Ming's words, Jiu Fei Niao also felt that the holy sword in her hand couldn't hold on for much longer. It felt like it was about to break. Then, here I come. Following that, with her trust in Wu Ming, Jiu Fei Niao didn't hesitate and slashed the holy sword in Wu Ming's direction. In an instant, the pressure of the holy sword was released. The light on the holy sword seemed to have found an outlet. The light was like a raging wave. It fiercely rushed towards Wu Ming's direction. At that moment, Wu Ming gave everyone the feeling of an ant in front of a flood. Jiu Fei Niao, who wasn't worried at first, turned pale. There was no other reason. It was because the holy light that was released was too powerful. The energy contained in it made Jiu Fei Niao's expression change. Stop! Jiu Fei Niao didn't hesitate to control the fake holy sword in her hand again. However, the result disappointed her. Boom! In an instant, the fake holy sword exploded and turned into magic particles that dissipated in the air. Jiu Fei Niao was also forced to take a few steps back from the sudden impact. It was obvious that the fake holy sword couldn't withstand the two completely opposite control spirits. Using her gift to release the real name of the noble phantasm and using her gift to release the noble phantasm again was like using explosives to break a dam. It was a little too whimsical to want to bet. Miss Fei Niao. Mr. Villo. Black Rabbit couldn't help but shout. However, the most important thing was still Wu Ming, because if Wu Ming was an ordinary person, he would be dead. Lily Rinha also looked at Wu Ming worriedly. Only 16 Knights and Letitia were very calm. This was because 16 Knights and Letitia believed that Wu Ming wasn't an ordinary person. He was a super strong person. On Wu Ming's side. Almost at the same time, the holy sword's impact of light arrived in front of Wu Ming. Facing the holy light that could destroy a city, Wu Ming stretched out a hand. Chapter 607. Wu Ming didn't do anything else as he stretched out his hand and started chanting. Thou hast violated the contract and brought sin to the world. Lord's Day, sinners shall be punished. Crush their backs, dig out their tendons, bones, hair, and brains, and trample on their blood and mud. If I am the one who cannot approach the darkness, I will follow the words of the Lord and destroy thee. The moment he finished chanting, the holy light came into contact with Wu Ming. Mr. Villo. Black Rabbit panicked and her hair turned pink. But in the next second, everyone, including Black Rabbit, calmed down. The holy light stopped at Wu Ming's position. No, it should be said that the moment the holy light came into contact with Wu Ming's position, it disappeared for some reason. Moments later, the torrential waves of light disappeared. Everyone saw countless streams of light flowing into Wu Ming's palm, and in the middle of Wu Ming's palm was a pitch-black hole. The light of the fake holy sword was swallowed by it. Although he was also very curious about this, the most important thing for now was that Wu Ming was fine. Phew. Letitia took a deep breath. Although Laetitia looked like she had victory in her hands, she was actually more afraid than anything else. After all, the relationship between two people changed not only on the surface, but also on a deeper level. Laetitia looked deeply at Wu Ming and said softly in a voice that only she could hear. "My master, you're really amazing. So amazing that it's mesmerizing." In short, Wu Ming's action made everyone and Jiu Fei sigh in relief. At this moment, Jiu Fei, who was relieved, suddenly realized that her body had become weak. She didn't pay attention and fell backward. Unlike 16 knights in Hiroi Biao, whose blessings increased their physical strength, Jiu Fei's blessings didn't increase her physical strength at all. In other words, Jiu Fei was just a normal person. On the other hand, if an ordinary person were to fall to the ground and injure the back of his head, the consequences would be unimaginable. Even if it didn't hurt the back of the head, for an ordinary person, falling backward would still hurt their back. Feeling the sudden loss of strength in his body, Zhou Yuan Bird helplessly closed his eyes in fear, waiting for the pain from the ground. But after waiting for a while, Distant Bird realized that it didn't feel any pain. On the contrary, it felt like it had fallen into a very warm embrace. In the next second, Zhou Yuan Flying Bird opened its eyes. "Miss, I said I won't let you get hurt." Wu Ming teased. "That's a very gentlemanly way of doing things. I'll give you an extra point. I'll even overlook your rudeness of carrying a lady in your arms," Jiao Fei now retorted in response to Wu Ming's teasing. Then, Jiu Fei Bird looked around and realized that it wasn't Wu Ming who had come to her side. Instead, she had come to Wu Ming's side. There was a purplish-black ripple where she was standing. At this moment, there was also a purplish-black ripple above her head, which was where Wu Ming was. "Ah, is this a teleportation gate? That's interesting." Jiu Fei now revealed an interested smile. This was Zhou Yuan Flying Bird's evaluation after experiencing the teleportation gate personally. Wu Ming had forgotten that no matter how much of a missy Zhou Yuan Flying Bird was, a problem child was still a problem child. After escaping from danger, the problem child's nature was revealed. Shaking his head, Wu Ming stopped carrying Zhou Yuan Flying Bird. Instead, he placed Zhou Yuan Flying Bird, who seemed to be fine, on the ground. Then, Wu Ming waved his hand and cancelled the teleportation gate. Then, Wu Ming looked at Zhou Yuan Flying Bird. "How are you? Is your body okay?" Wu Ming asked. "Thank you for your concern. Although I still feel a little uncomfortable, I'm basically fine." After moving her body, Zhou Yuan Flying Bird replied to Wu Ming in a very ladylike manner. Wu Ming guessed that Zhou Yuan Flying Bird's sudden lack of strength was the after effect of using gift overload. After all, Zhou Yuan Flying Bird's gift had not been used much. It was only used on people who were not very strong. This time, it was used directly on the Holy Sword. It was a rather intense operation. Zhou Yuan Flying Bird might not be used to it. Still, even if it was a fake Holy Sword, it was still a holy sword. Even if Zhou Yuan Flying Bird had one of the strongest gifts of humans, she could not use the fake holy sword that Wu Ming made without any after effects. It was like playing a game. If you completed a rare quest and obtained a rare class, but that class was only level 1. You could not equip the class's level 100 equipment, not even the fake level 50 equipment. "Miss Flying Bird. Mr. Villo. Are you guys okay?" Black Rabbit shouted as he ran. His face was full of panic. Renhe Lily was following behind him. "We're fine, Black Rabbit." Zhou Yuan Flying Bird shook her head, telling him not to worry. "Whoa! That was so scary. First, Mr. Villo was almost killed. Then, Miss Flying Bird fainted. It was too dangerous." Black Rabbit looked extremely frightened. However, Black Rabbit's words made Wu Ming and Zhou Yuan Flying Bird raise their eyebrows. "Black Rabbit, what do you mean? I'm super strong. What do you mean by almost killed? And me? What do you mean by fainted? I'm still awake, okay? Wu Ming and Zhou Yuan Flying Bird said. Both of them grabbed Black Rabbit's rabbit ears and started to ravage them. Wah, wah, Mr. Villo. Miss Flying Bird, let go of me. Black Rabbit instantly became teary-eyed. Wu Ming and Fei Niao looked at each other, smiled, and said in unison. This is your punishment. Wah, you two problem children. Letitia, who was slowly walking over with 16 knights in Haruhai Byayoi, looked helplessly at Wu Ming and Flying Bird bullying Black Rabbit. She did not know what to say. She could only say that Black Rabbit was too cute. Sometimes, even she wanted to bully Black Rabbit. However, no matter what, Letitia would still take care of Black Rabbit. Therefore, Letitia quickly ended Black Rabbit's suffering. Master, after experiencing it personally, did you discover anything new about Miss Flying Bird's gift? Letitia asked. Everyone, including Wu Ming and Flying Bird, came back to their senses. That's right. Everyone's initial goal was to study Zhou Yuan Flying Bird's gift. Now, everyone was admiring Wu Ming and Zhou Yuan Flying Bird bullying Black Rabbit. Of course, there's a new discovery. Wu Ming calmly released the rabbit ears that were almost 1 meter long. By the way, Black Rabbit almost cried when it bounced back. I discovered that Flying Bird's gift is not to control, but to give. Chapter 608. Bestowal. Everyone was confused. Yes. Wu Ming nodded. Originally, when Flying Bird controlled the holy sword I made, I didn't see anything. However, when I realized that the control was only temporary, I began to doubt Flying Bird's bestowal. No one said anything. They all looked at Wu Ming, waiting for Wu Ming to continue. And after taking Flying Bird's attack, I was completely sure of Flying Bird's bestowal. Excuse me. Could it be that you judged it from the power of that holy sword? 16 Knights raised his hand and asked. At that moment, the problem children, including 16 Knights, didn't cause any trouble. They hid their nature as problem children. Naturally, I know the power of the fake holy sword that I created. Coincidentally, I also have a good understanding of the power of the real holy sword. The holy sword true name liberation that Fei Niao used just now was comparable to the power of the real holy sword. After Wu Ming finished speaking, he felt that his words weren't accurate enough. He shook his head. Although I can see that, I don't have the real holy sword. Therefore, I can't prove it to you. How about this? As Wu Ming said that, he snapped his fingers. A silver holy sword that was different from the Excalibur appeared in Wu Ming's hand. With this holy sword, I can prove it to you. This made 16 Knights smile with interest. So that means you have the real holy sword. Wu Ming shrugged. He didn't answer with words. Instead, he answered with actions. Suddenly, a golden ripple appeared beside Wu Ming, and a silver-white holy sword appeared from it. The silver holy sword emitted a powerful and ancient aura. At first glance, one could tell that it was the so-called Godhead equipment in the box court world. The sword in Zhou Yufei's hand was exactly the same as the holy sword Wu Ming made. It just lacked the powerful and ancient aura. Flying Bird, is your body okay? Wu Ming asked Zhou Distant Flying Bird. No problem. I just wasn't used to it just now. I'm fine now. Zhou Yuan Bird was like a proud cat as he raised his head. Well then, I'll leave this to you. Wu Ming handed the fake holy sword to Zhou Far Flying Bird. After Zhou Yuan Flying Bird took it, Wu Ming pulled out the holy sword that was embedded in the golden ripples in the air. Fei Niao, try using your grace on this fake holy sword in your hand. Later, I will synchronize with you and use this real holy sword. Although he couldn't understand Wu Ming's actions, it was probably to prove Wu Ming's conjecture. Zhou Yuan Flying Bird nodded and raised the silver sacred sword. Then, Zhou Yuan Flying Bird looked at the sacred sword in Wu Ming's hand. What is this child's real name? Wu Ming smiled. He was quite happy that Zhou Yuan Flying Bird called his sacred sword a child. He stroked the blade of the genuine X-Silver sword in his hand. This child's real name is X-Silver. He has been with me for a long time. Zhou Yuan Flying Bird didn't know if the sacred sword had a mind of its own. When Wu Ming stroked the body of the sword, the sacred sword trembled slightly as if it was very happy. Understood. Zhou Yuan Flying Bird smiled. After Zhou Yuan Flying Bird said, understood, other than Letitia who was standing behind Wu Ming, the rest of the no name, including 16 knights and Haruhito Masaaki quickly retreated 5 meters away from Zhou Yuan Flying Bird. What are you guys doing? Putting down the sacred sword, Zhou Yuan Flying Bird turned around and looked at the people who were not too far away. She instantly became speechless. We have no choice, Miss Flying Bird. We have seen the power of the sacred sword just now. It seems very dangerous. It is indeed better to stay a little further away. Black Rabbit smiled embarrassedly as he replied to Zhou Yuan Flying Bird's ridicule. Moreover, Mr. Villo is preparing to use the real sacred sword, True Liberation. We have to be careful. Ren touched the back of his head embarrassedly. That's right. Lily also nodded embarrassedly. Wu Ming didn't know whether to laugh or cry. However, he couldn't blame them. After all, Excalibur's noble phantasm wasn't weak, and X-Silver, which was also known as the Holy Sword, naturally wasn't weak either. It wasn't surprising that Wu Ming was able to scare everyone with it. But, what about you, 16th Knight? Don't tell me you're scared too. Wu Ming looked at Reverse 16 Knights who was standing in front of Black Rabbit, Ren, and the others. Wu Ming heard that in the gift competition where the prize was Letitia, Reverse 16 Knights was the one who broke the other's gift with his bare hands. Although the true liberation of the sacred sword was not weak, Wu Ming didn't think that the true liberation of the sacred sword would have any effect on Reverse 16 Knights when he was up against such a crazy person. Perhaps, with just one punch, the sacred sword's light cannon would be destroyed. Why would I be afraid? It's just that I think it's a little troublesome. I'm the one who hates troublesome things the most. 16 Knights spread out his hands with a smile on his face as he answered Wu Ming helplessly. However, in Wu Ming's opinion, Reverse 16 Knights like to look for trouble, and also like to create trouble. He didn't seem to be afraid of trouble at all. Ignoring Reverse 16 Knights for the time being, Wu Ming looked at Hiroi Masaaki who was beside Reverse 16 Knights. What about you, Masaaki? Are you afraid of trouble too? As a fake girl, Hiroi Masaaki tilted her little head. I'm not afraid of trouble, but they all retreated, so I'll go with them. An extremely calm voice entered Wu Ming's ears, making Wu Ming feel like he was defeated. This made Wu Ming want to say, this time, you won't be completely liberated. There won't be any danger. Please don't worry. Forget it. Wu Ming didn't care about them anymore. Ignore them, Flying Bird. Let's begin. After greeting Flying Bird, Wu Ming and Zhou Far Flying Bird raised their sacred swords above their heads. X-Silver. X-Silver. Two completely different true name liberation were chanted by Wu Ming and Zhou Far Flying Bird. In an instant, the two silver-white sacred swords gathered a bright silver light. At the same time, the people who were hiding 5 meters behind Wu Ming and Zhou Far Flying Bird retreated even further. Hey! Little brother, be careful not to misfire. Reverse 16 Knights didn't forget to tease Wu Ming. Wu Ming turned around and looked at Reverse 16 Knights helplessly. Zhou Far Flying Bird's attention was on the two sacred swords. Two silver-white lights with the same scale of energy were hidden and covered the silver sacred swords, just like the Excalibur from before. However, looking at the two sacred swords that were emitting the same power, Far Flying Bird seemed to have understood something. Chapter 609. After that, Wuming spoke to Yuan Flying Bird, who was in deep thought. That's fine, Flying Bird. Don't we need to release it? Yuan Flying Bird was confused. There's no need for that. After all, we still need to use No Name's land when it regains its vitality. It's not good to destroy this piece of land like this. Yuan Flying Bird was a little embarrassed. She naturally knew what Wuming was talking about. Even though Excalibur's attack wasn't aimed at No Name's house, it still managed to plow a large piece of wasteland around No Name. Moreover, it was a very fierce one. Rather than plowing, it would be more accurate to say that they had dug. Moreover, what Wuming said was right. After all, they still needed to use the land in the future. It was not good to destroy the land like this. Then that's fine. Yuan Flying Bird nodded with a little regret. Yuan Flying Bird actually liked the feeling of releasing the holy sword. After all, it was a light cannon. It was so exciting, and she had released it herself. Therefore, it was understandable that Yuan Flying Bird wanted to do it again. Wuming didn't notice Yuan Flying Bird's slightly regretful expression. He turned his head and immediately shouted to reverse 16 knights and the others. It's fine. Everyone, come over. Seeing that there was no danger, everyone stopped hiding. Instead, they walked over to Wuming and Yuan Flying Bird's side. Wow! It's already very beautiful from afar. Now that it's closer, it's even more beautiful. Little fox girl Lily curiously looked at the holy sword in Wuming and Yuan Flying Bird's hands. Actually, it's even better at night. Wuming freed one of his hands and patted Lily's little head. Lily's tail wagged as she enjoyed Wuming's touch. After patting little fox girl's head, Wuming looked at everyone. Does anyone see anything special about it? Wuming asked. Let me ask you a question. How is the quality of this fake holy sword? Yuan Flying Bird, who was holding the fake holy sword with both hands, asked. Her strength had not yet reached the level where she could lift the charging holy sword with one hand. It's a sacred sword that I casually created. It's an existence that will break upon contact with a slightly stronger weapon. After hearing Wuming's words, Distant Bird revealed an "I understand" smile. However, 16 knights had already seen through everything. It's a godhead, isn't it? 16 knights crossed his arms and smiled. Godhood? Black Rabbit was stunned. He did not understand how this had anything to do with godhood. At this moment, Letitia, who was standing behind Wuming, also spoke. Is that so? I understand now. Letitia only pondered for a moment before she quickly understood. She was like Yuan Fei Niao, watching from the side. Not to mention, Letitia only needed to observe and did not need to be distracted at all. It was not strange that she could understand the principles so quickly. At the same time, Haruhibu Yaichi also nodded. So that's how it is. That's why the fake sacred sword in Fei Niao's hand is as powerful as the real one. Haruhibu Yaichi was also very smart. 16 knights had already told her the answer. How could she not understand the principle behind it? What? What kind of profound question is everyone talking about? Don't leave Black Rabbit alone. Black Rabbit was irritated because he could not understand what Wuming and the others were talking about. However, Black Rabbit had indirectly forgotten about Renwa Lily. He did not know what Wuming and the others were talking about. 16 knights, Distant Bird, and Haruhibu Yaichi looked at each other, smiled, and showed an expression of a problem children. Then the three spoke in unison. Be our maid and we'll tell you. 3-inch don't even think about it, you problem children. As if protecting his virginity that was about to be lost, Black Rabbit protected his body and took 2 steps back. Okay, everyone stop teasing Black Rabbit. Letitia came out to mediate. Okay, you're teasing Black Rabbit again. Black Rabbit's face froze, and then roared at the 3 problem children angrily. How could that be? Black Rabbit, we really do want to take you in as a maid. 16 Nights Reversal responded to Black Rabbit with a smile. Humph. Black Rabbit snorted and ignored the problem children. Instead, she looked at Wooming. Mr. Villo, tell Black Rabbit what's going on. Looking at Black Rabbit, who was already very pitiful, Wooming did not have the intention to tease her. In fact, it's already very obvious. I deliberately used a little magic to create a fake sacred sword. The result is that the fake sacred sword in Fei Niao's hand can't exert the power of my real sacred sword, but it reached the power of the real one in Fei Niao's hand. With Wooming's explanation and the divinity that 16 Nights mentioned before, Black Rabbit understood. In other words, this fake holy sword has been bestowed with a godhead. That's why it can reach the power of the real one despite its poor quality. Ren asked as if he was confirming something. That's right, that's it. Fei Niao's gift is not control. That's just a byproduct of her true ability. The true nature of Fei Niao's gift is to give the target a simulated divinity, so as to control the target of the simulated divinity. That was also why ancient flying birds, control, could even control a person's heart, just like how it dealt with Guard in the beginning. Because when the gift of the ancient flying bird was activated, Guard, who only had a 7-digit soul, became the ancient flying bird's slave in an extremely short period of time. The reason why it was a simulated divinity was because ancient flying bird could not control a target for a long time. Once this gift was not used, the simulated divinity that existed in a target's body would disappear. Unless ancient flying bird continued to use her light of might on a target continuously. And the reason why ancient flying bird's gift did not work on Wooming was also because of this. A simulated divinity was not a real divinity, so it was not that powerful. When ancient flying bird's simulated divinity entered Wooming's body, Wooming's own strength destroyed the simulated divinity, which was a foreign object, so ancient flying bird's control naturally could not be done. However, the ability to give a simulated divinity to a target is already very powerful. No wonder Lord White Yiksha said that flying bird's gift is also one of the strongest gifts of humans. Black Rabbit smiled and looked at ancient flying bird. It must be known that only certain special existences could give divinity. It was not something that any random god could do. And ancient flying bird could give a target divinity with a mere human body, which was already very heaven-defying. And whether it was divinity or simulated divinity, there was not much difference to ancient flying bird. When she was powerful, the simulated divinity would naturally be the same as the divinity. Black Rabbit had a simulated divinity weapon, which was no different from the real one, because it was bestowed by the powerful Sakra. Seeing Black Rabbit's smiling face, Wooming mercilessly dealt a blow. That being said, flying bird's gift has a drawback. Chapter 610. Drawback. Black Rabbit was confused. What kind of drawback could there be to giving someone a simulated divinity? Could it be that they would become problematic children? That was indeed a big drawback. Black Rabbit's imagination ran wild. Is there a drawback to my gift? Jiu Yufei asked with concern. After all, this was related to her future growth. She had to be concerned. Let's try to guess. Wooming was not in a hurry to answer. Instead, he let everyone guess. 16 Nights closed his eyes and thought. He recalled the scenes from before and thought of one thing. I'm afraid that misgift would cause the person who was given the simulated divinity to be damaged. 16 Knights opened his eyes and looked at the silver holy sword in Jiu Yufei's hand that was still absorbing light. Then, the fake holy sword in Jiu Yufei's hand seemed to have reached its limit. Without any warning, it exploded like fireworks. Wu Ming waved his hand when the holy sword exploded. The black hole formed by annihilation covered the position of the holy sword in Jiu Yufei's hand and absorbed the energy at an extremely fast speed. Then, the black hole disappeared. The remaining magic particles of the fake holy sword floated in the air for a while before disappearing completely. The explosion of the holy sword had frightened Black Rabbit and Lily. They were afraid that the explosion of the holy sword would cause the energy inside to leak out. The result was good. The fake holy sword that was given a simulated divinity by Jiu Yufei, along with the energy that it absorbed from the atmosphere, was directly devoured by Wu Ming's annihilation. The last bit of it turned into magic particles and completely disappeared. Because Wu Ming used annihilation in time, Jiu Yufei was not hurt. However, even though he wasn't injured, he was still shocked and took a few steps back. After all, it was the thing in her hand that exploded. How could it not be scary? 16 Knights is right. Flying Bird's gift seems to cause a huge loss to the person it is given to. Just like the fake holy sword just now. Although it was raised to the same level as the real holy sword because of the divinity, the price was the lifespan issue. That's why the fake holy sword exploded, right? Jiu Fei Bird said knowingly. This was also the reason why the first fake Excalibur had exploded. At that time, Flying Bird gave the order to stop. That holy sword was also casually created by Wu Ming. It was already very good that it could release the noble phantasm once. If Flying Bird gave the same order again, it would be considered light if it directly exploded. In any case, the accumulated energy within the sacred sword had been released. If it hadn't been released, Jiu Yuan Fei Bird, who had the body of an ordinary person, might have died on the spot. So, if Flying Bird wants to fully utilize the power of its gift, there are only two ways. Wu Ming extended 2 fingers. First, simulate the bestowal of a godhead and use it accordingly. After all, as long as he could find a powerful boon that could withstand the ancient Flying Bird's boon, he wouldn't have to worry about the extreme method of having the boon sacrifice its lifespan to increase its power. As for the second point, 16 Knights spoke. The second point is to prepare a large number of normal boons for Milady. Each of them can be used as a one-time boon, right? 16 Knights smiled. But that means... Letitia and Black Rabbit said in unison and then paused. Milady Flying Bird's boon, actually. Lily Renwa continued Letitia and Black Rabbit's words and paused at the end. It's a very expensive boon. Haruhito Hikari, who was a pseudo 3-nothings, said the last thing. However, Jiu Yuan Fei Bird was dumbfounded. One should know that she, Jiu Yuan Fei Bird, was tired of the status and money in her world, so she abandoned everything and came here. But now, she was told that if she wanted to have fun in this game called Hakata World, she would have to pay for it. In other words, Jiu Yuan Fei Bird, who had abandoned her wealth, had to start working for money. Ha ha ha, congratulations, milady. You can return to the time when you were rich. Although she had to earn money herself. 16 Knights laughed mercilessly as a bad friend. But this was the truth, and even Jiu Yuan Fei Bird had nothing to say. Well, since Mr. Villo lent us a lot of money, we can take a part of it to prepare some boons for Milady Flying Bird. After all, boons that could withstand the power of Jiu Yuan Fei Bird's simulated divinity were very rare, so they could only choose the second path. Actually, if Flying Bird needs it, I can create some powerful boons for you. After all, Wu Ming's create green item was not like projection magic, which could only last for a while. Wu Ming could make the item last forever, but it would take some effort. After all, It was very easy for a weak item to reach this stage, but it was very difficult for a powerful item to reach this stage. That was also why Wuming did not create a pseudo-sky lock that could last forever. Instead, he created a time-limited item that needed to be maintained by injecting mana regularly. This was because creating pseudo-sky locks that wouldn't disappear was very troublesome. Moreover, the wear and tear during battle made the loss outweigh the gains. It would be better to create pseudo-sky locks that would disappear and inject mana into them periodically. By the way, there was only one pseudo-sky lock left in Wuming's relic space. The rest were tied to the American Singularity Hercules and sunk into the lake with Hercules. However, it did not matter even if all of them were gone, such a time-limited sky lock was easy to create. There's no need. Jiu Yuan Fei Bird successfully resisted Wuming's temptation. Jiu Yuan Fei Bird, won't trouble you guys. For the time being, I'll replace it with a normal boon. I'll think of a way to create a powerful boon myself. After all, it was a problem. Cough for a proud person, even if they were her companions, Jiu Yuan Fei Bird would not accept charity. Everyone looked at each other. Facing Jiu Yuan Fei Bird's stubbornness, they could only follow her wishes. Since that's the case, why don't you accept some of my toys? Wuming smiled and snapped his fingers. A few holy swords fell to the ground. I told you, I don't need your help. Jiu Yuan Fei Bird crossed her arms in front of her chest and rejected Wuming. However, Wuming shook his head. You can't say that. What you need are consumable blessings. My sacred swords are also consumable blessings. What's the difference between them? He picked up a holy sword and waved it in front of Jiu Yuan Fei Bird. Since you need a trump card or something like that, these holy swords can be treated as such. However, Wuming's words did not move Jiu Yuan Fei Bird. Although Wuming's words were reasonable. Moreover, I promise to protect you from harm. If you encounter any danger while I'm not by your side, these holy swords can be treated as my protection. Jiu Yuan Fei Bird started to think about the promise. Why does it sound so much like a confession? Black Rabbit complained embarrassedly. Then, Black Rabbit was glared at by Wuming and Jiu Yuan Fei Bird. If that's the case, I'll take a few. Jiu Yuan Fei Bird said as she took out her boon card and placed a few of the holy swords on the ground into it. Wuming smiled. After all, for a young lady like her, using a promise was more effective. Chapter 6:11. After Wuming's effort, the problem of the distant flying bird was finally solved. After that, Wuming prepared to solve the problem of the land. After all, when Letitia persuaded Wuming to go out for a walk, Wuming didn't think about the problem of flying bird's gift. Instead, he wanted to see if he could solve the problem of No Name's land. After all, it wasn't a good idea to leave it abandoned. However, he couldn't tell Flying Bird about this. Otherwise, with her problematic temper, she would definitely cause a ruckus. After that, Wuming suggested that they try to restore the vitality of the land. This made Black Rabbit, Wren, and the other No Name members pleasantly surprised. After all, when 16 Knights and the other two joined No Name, the land had already lost its vitality. They, who had never seen No Name's land with vitality, naturally didn't have any expectations. This was like a person who had seen a beautiful scenery and wanted to bring you to see it again. He might be looking forward to it since he had never seen it before. However, if you hadn't seen it before, you wouldn't be able to imagine how beautiful it was. The two were the same. However, humans were such animals. It wasn't that 16 Knights and the other two were cold-blooded and heartless. They were also very concerned about No Name's land being able to restore vitality. After all, this was their home. Mr. Villo, do you have a way to restore the vitality of our land? Black Rabbit's rabbit ears shook as he looked forward to it. If the land can be restored, then we can grow our own vegetables. The little fox girl Lily, who belonged to the logistics team, happily wagged her tail. Although they now had the water tree sapling that Wooming and 16 Knights obtained from defeating the water god to provide water, the other ingredients still had to be bought. Although No Name wasn't lacking in money now, generally speaking, larger communities would have their own vegetable gardens and the like. Being self-reliant was not a problem. Just like a country couldn't always rely on foreign imports. If they could rely on themselves, it was better to rely on themselves. Moreover, they should save as much as they could. After all, this money was borrowed from Wooming. I'm just giving it a try. I don't dare to boast that I can really restore life to the land of No Name. Wooming smiled and shook his head. After all, if you asked Wooming to fight, he would absolutely have no objection. But if you asked him to be a doctor or treat an illness, it would be a bit difficult. It wasn't that there weren't any methods to treat it, but Wooming hadn't tried treating the soil, so he didn't dare to boast. But he had to give it a try. Everyone had their first time. All in all, Wooming went to the land that long far-flying bird had destroyed with the fake holy sword. He started to restore the life force of the land and the land that long far-flying bird had destroyed. After all, although the land was barren, at least it was still flat and didn't look messy. On the other hand, after Jiu Yufei's holy sword had reclaimed the land, not to mention the huge ravine, there were also some serious bumps. Therefore, Wooming decided to take the lead and conduct an experiment on the seemingly messy land to see if he could restore the vitality of the land. If it didn't work, he could also restore the land on this side, right? Everyone stood behind Wooming, while Wooming stood beside the huge ravine. Then, I'll begin. Wooming said as he knelt on the ground with one knee. First, a golden ripple suddenly appeared beside Wooming. Then, Wooming took out a few exquisite glass bottles that contained dark red potions. These were the healing potions from the Yggdrasil game world. Wooming opened the exquisite glass bottle and poured the red potion into the ravine. Then, Wooming poured all the healing potions he had taken out into the ravine. The red healing potions quickly seeped into the land. Black Rabbit and the others behind Wooming watched Wooming's series of actions with eyes full of doubt. They really didn't know what the healing potions were, but could it be that by pouring a few bottles of potions, the land that had been abandoned for 3 years after being attacked by the Demon King could be restored? The answer was of course impossible, at least the few of them felt that it was impossible. However, Wooming also thought so. Therefore, Wooming began the next step. Chanting the spirit language. A person with the supreme power of protection, the gods protect him, the demons hate him, 10,000 enemies can't get close to him, like a fountain of vitality that constantly surges, granting the world equal protection. The magical spirit language came out from Wooming's mouth. In just a moment, Black Rabbit and the others felt that Wooming's body began to glow, and it was accompanied by the breath of life. That was normal. Wooming's vitality, one of the 12 incarnations, was like a never-ending fountain. Vitality gave Wooming endless vitality, recovery, and all kinds of resistance. Usually, this ability was used on Wooming passively, but the passive effect was not obvious. However, it was still of great help to Wooming. This was also the reason why Wooming recovered so quickly after being injured by the explosion of the black mud. Having a high HP was not scary, having a high defense was not scary, but being able to recover HP was scary. After flying for half a day, his HP was restored in less than half a day. If Gideon knew about this, he would definitely vomit blood. And if Wooming didn't guess wrong, Gideon didn't seem to have any recovery skills. Therefore, as long as Wooming found his main body and fully activated his vitality incarnation, he would be able to catch Gideon off guard and directly attack the root of the problem. Facts proved that the current Wooming was not unable to defeat Gideon. being able to make Gydia summon the black mud to self-destruct was the best proof. Cough cough. In short, the vitality incarnation gave Wuming endless vitality. Wuming was ready to use the healing potion as a catalyst to transfer vitality to this land. There was no limit to authority and so on. As long as one was still alive, as long as one worked hard to develop one's ability, nothing was impossible. The ancient flying bird was a good example. It went from being controlled to being given. And Wuming's vitality incarnation, no one said that it could not be transferred out. Although he had never tried it before, Wuming wanted to give it a try today. Then, Wuming placed one hand on the edge of the gully and closed his eyes. Then, Wuming's endless vitality followed Wuming's arm to the swollen land and came in contact with the healing potion that had been integrated into the land. Then, Wuming's mouth moved. Release, life. In an instant, an invisible pressure was released with Wuming as the center, and a huge amount of vitality emerged. Chapter 6:12. Countless breaths of life emerged, and the invisible aura spread in all directions. Although it was invisible, it could still affect the surroundings. The aura impacted 16 knights and the others. Ren, Lily, and the others who were weaker couldn't adapt and couldn't help but retreat. Seeing this, 16 knights and Letitia, who were the strongest, stood in front of everyone and blocked the aura. Retroactive 16 knights' uniform fluttered in the wind. Ignoring her messy blonde hair, retroactive 16 knights smiled at Wu Ming, the culprit. This is really a big scene. However, Wu Ming couldn't hear this because he found something interesting. Wu Ming found that his vitality avatar could restore the lifeless land of no name. No, it should be said that Wu Ming's vitality avatar alone could do it, and adding the healing potions was just icing on the cake. But that wasn't the main point. It was that Wu Ming had underestimated his authority. Wu Ming found that he could completely restore the land within the area covered by the aura. The 12 avatar authorities that were strengthened by the Great Origin, combined with the power of 2 gods and Wu Ming's own Dragon of Origin, were not weak abilities. Although many of them were not directly related to combat, their powerful effects could not be denied. At this moment, the vitality avatar had proven that Wu Ming's authority was not weak. No, it should be said that there were no weak authorities, only weak users. It seems that I have to take a good look at my authority, Wu Ming said to himself. Then, Wu Ming looked and found that the area covered by the aura he just released was the entire area of no name. In other words, Wu Ming could completely restore the lifeless land of no name to its perfect state. Let's do it. Wu Ming nodded without hesitation and put his other hand on the ground. 16 knights and the others instantly felt the ground shaking. What's going on? Is it an earthquake? Black Rabbit was shocked and subconsciously protected the arm of Haruhi Biaichi, who was closest to her. It's not an earthquake, it's Master's ability. Letitia answered Black Rabbit calmly. Although she couldn't fully understand her master's ability, Letitia, who had become Wu Ming's dependent, could still somewhat sense Wu Ming's ability. Just like now, the earth shaking was caused by Wu Ming's ability, and Letitia could sense it. At this time, Haruhi Biaichi, who was especially concerned about the lifeless land, suddenly spoke. Look around you. Everyone looked at the land around them. The cracked ground began to heal, and the nutrient-less sand began to disappear. The soft and weak ground began to harden, and some green grass began to grow on the ground that had no greenery at all. This is... Black Rabbit, Ren, and the others were quite shocked. Needless to say, everyone understood. It was obvious that the vitality of this land had been restored by Silent Cry. This is great. Our land is finally rejuvenated. Black Rabbit happily hugged Haruhi Biaichi, who was beside her, and jumped up and down. Even Haruhi, who was a hypocrite, was moved by Black Rabbit's excitement, and a slight smile appeared on his face. Ren, Lily, and Letitia also had expressions of joy. After all, they had personally seen this land that was originally filled with life become barren, and now they saw this barren land filled with life again. This was the feeling of an old player. 16 Knights and Yuki weren't as excited as Black Rabbit and the others, but the smiles on their faces showed that they were in a good mood. But there was a problem. Villow's land seems to have been restored a bit too much. Yuki, who was carefully observing, saw that even the land near the house in No Name had been restored and slightly frowned. Immediately, 16 Knights jumped into the air, and after a short delay of a few seconds, landed on the ground. I'm afraid that little brother has restored all of No Name's abandoned land. 16 Knights, who had good eyesight, saw the surrounding scene. This isn't good, Yuki said uneasily. As a young lady of a corporate aristocrat, and as a young lady from her world that had just ended World War II, her country had entered a period of recovery. Yuki clearly understood the methods and rules of post-war recovery. No Name was once the largest community in the East District, and was recognized as the regional ruler by Byakuya, the class ruler. Naturally, No Name had a large piece of land. At the very least, it was an area that others would covet. But because of the Demon King's attack, such a large piece of land had completely lost its life. It had lost its name, flag, and companions. This was why the other communities didn't hit it when it was down, and they didn't even try to steal it. After all, a piece of land without life wasn't that easy to restore. Yes, the other communities wouldn't do something like that. Although there weren't many people in No Name who didn't experience the Demon King's attack, it wasn't that small either. At the very least, it was more than enough to take care of such a large piece of land. And now, not to mention 16 Knights and the others, 95% of No Name's people were children under the age of 10. Even if the children were included, there would only be a mere 130 people. No Name's territory was very large, quite large. At the very least, it was the size of a small town. How could you let a village with 95% of its population being children under the age of 10 manage such a large piece of land? As a genius, 16 Knights Reversal naturally understood this logic. However, 16 Knights wasn't worried about this. Little brother has indeed gone a bit overboard, but I think he should have a way to solve it. 16 Knights held the back of his head with both hands as he looked at Wu Ming, who had finished restoring the land. He stood up and walked over to them. It's done. Wu Ming smiled and waved at everyone. But as the leader, Ren stood up. Mr. Villo, isn't it a bit too much to directly restore all of No Name's land? Ren smiled awkwardly. After all, he had good intentions. Although it wasn't to the point of questioning him, this kind of question made the shy youth feel embarrassed. Don't tell us you didn't think of this, or I'll look down on you. Zhou Yuanfei, who was slightly closer to Wu Ming, said ruthlessly. But Wu Ming didn't disappoint them. How could I not think of this? Of course, I have a way. Chapter 613. Wu Ming wasn't a careless person, he did it on purpose. But, Mr. Villo, we don't have enough people. Black Rabbit's ears drooped, looking regretful. Looks like we can only rent out the extra land to earn money. Black Rabbit said helplessly. Why was she helpless? Although Black Rabbit wasn't wrong, this was still the main base of No Name. How could they rent out the main base of the community to earn money? After all, the community was comparable to a country, and as a member of the country, they had a collective sense of honor. This was also why Black Rabbit was helpless, because she didn't want outsiders to enter her and her companions' home. But why would Black Rabbit still consider renting out the land even though she was helpless? Although No Name wasn't short on money, the money was still borrowed from Wuming. Although Wuming didn't have a deadline, Ren and Black Rabbit had a strong sense of responsibility and believed that they couldn't be too much of a default on Wuming's debt. Therefore, they were still making money by principle. Plus, it was really a waste of a large piece of land like No Name. It was a special time to deal with it, so they could only endure the humiliation. That's the only way. Ren also nodded helplessly, agreeing with Black Rabbit's opinion. However, this made Wuming dumbfounded. I say, Black Rabbit, Ren, are you two listening to me properly? Wuming didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he helplessly flicked Ren and Black Rabbit's heads, causing them to cry out in pain. Didn't I say, I have a way? Before, when Wuming borrowed money to No Name, now it was the same with the land issue. Why did these two always listen to Wuming's words? During the borrowing incident, Wuming had also said that it was a donation of No Name. However, Black Rabbit, Ren, and even the children who were slightly older than Lily insisted on treating the money as a loan. So be it. Wuming didn't want to take it back anyway, so he gave her an indefinite period of time. However, Black Rabbit and Ren had the idea that they had to return the money as soon as possible. They started their money-making plan. Although it wasn't as tiring as before, it still wasn't easy. This time was the same. Wuming said that he had a way, but these two guys ignored him. This made Wuming not know whether to laugh or cry. How can we allow outsiders to use our No Name base's land? You have to follow your heart, Black Rabbit. Don't forget your original intention. This sentence was not a joke. Black Rabbit's original intention of inviting Wuming was to protect her family's home. It could not change because of this. But, Mr. Villo, we really don't have enough manpower. Black Rabbit rubbed his aching forehead with an innocent expression. What a little idiot. Wuming smiled helplessly, then gave Black Rabbit's head another smack. Wah dash, because he hit the same place, Black Rabbit was about to cry again. However, the stick had been given, now it was time to give the carrot. You already have a backer like me. What are you afraid of? Wuming stroked Black Rabbit's head and smiled. After all, he was a powerhouse that White Yiksha personally admitted was not inferior to her. It could be said that with such a powerhouse joining No Name, it was only a matter of time before it rose. Then, Villo, do you have any ideas? Haruhito Hikari pulled Wuming's sleeve and asked curiously. Of course, the idea is to increase the number of people. Wuming kept them in suspense and smiled. Then, Wuming reached out with one hand. In an instant, a golden ripple swallowed Wuming's arm. It looked like Wuming was looking for something. I've been curious for a long time. Villo, what is this golden ripple? Black Rabbit asked with interest and puzzlement. One of my abilities. It's just ordinary personal space. Although I have the gift card, this old friend has been with me for a long time. It's still more convenient this way. After Wuming finished speaking, he seemed to have found what he was looking for and pulled his hand out of the golden ripple. A palm-sized stone figurine appeared in Wuming's hand. It looked like a stone giant, but this stone giant was slightly smaller. Stone figurine. Black Rabbit looked curiously at the palm-sized stone figurine in Wuming's hand and poked it twice. This is not an ordinary stone figurine. Wuming shook his head and moved his arm away from Black Rabbit who was poking the figurine. This made Black Rabbit puff out his cheeks in dissatisfaction. Did you know that there is a rare stone figurine item that can summon endless demons? Wuming stopped playing with Black Rabbit and asked everyone. Wuming had such an item. It was one of the many powerful items that Demiurgos gave Wuming when Wuming left Nizalik. A rare gift that can summon endless demons. Everyone who had never heard of such a gift muttered. If that item is used, unless the item is destroyed, the summoned demons will fill up the entire world. Endlessly summoning demons was no joke. It was a real thing. It was a game item. When game items were transformed into reality, some of their abilities were often quite terrifying. Resurrection alone was already very powerful. No matter which world it was, resurrecting life was quite difficult. Only existences like Nazalic had the ability to resurrect without any sequelae. Or it could be said that the other world also had such an ability. Wuming learned from Sebastian that Rostsang's captain had the ability to resurrect. However, it seemed that the physical fitness had to meet the standard, and they had to lie in bed for a month. Even so, the native of that world had the ability to resurrect, which was enough to open Wuming's eyes. After Wuming finished speaking, Jiu Fei now looked at the stone figurine in Wuming's hand seriously. Could it be that the one in your hand is that rare gift? Jiu Fei now asked calmly. Of course not. Wuming shook his head. This made Black Rabbit, Ren, and the others who were slightly worried feel relieved. Although I also have that item. Then why did you say it as if you have never seen it before? Black Rabbit roared at Wuming. Ignoring Black Rabbit's roar, Wuming raised the stone figurine in his hand, or rather, it could be called the magic puppet, Graham, figurine. It seems that magic puppets are stone figurines. This is a tool that can summon an endless number of magic puppets. Chapter 6:14. Endless Magic Marionettes. Everyone repeated Wuming's words. You mean to let the magic marionettes work on No Name's land? 16 Knights crossed his arms in front of his chest. As one of the more intelligent members of No Name, 16 Knights easily guessed Wuming's thoughts based on the series of words he had said before. After all, there are a lot of magic marionettes, and they don't need to eat or rest. They are the perfect labor force. As he said this, Wuming looked at the magic marionette in his hand. This tool could summon endless magic marionettes of various types. Although there were no management-type magic marionettes, as long as the tool was controlled properly and recognized as the master of No Name, then even the youngest child of No Name would be able to command the magic marionettes. Moreover, this is a tool that can summon endless magic marionettes. We can also make money by selling magic marionettes. Wuming's words made Rinha Black Rabbit's eyes light up, and his expression became more cheerful. Lily also cried out happily. That's great, this way our community won't have to worry about financial resources. Although Lily looked like a little lowly, in the No Name where the average age was less than 10 years old, Lily had a lot of responsibilities. Not only did she have to prepare 3 meals a day for Wuming and the others, but she also had to lead the capable children to prepare 3 meals a day for the 120 children. Not only that, but Lily was also in charge of all kinds of daily necessities and all kinds of housework for No Name. Although the No Name's house was damaged a lot, but in these 3 years, a part of it was repaired, but this part was already big enough. Otherwise, why would there be an underground bathing area, and Wuming and the others could choose a room at will, and that was because the house was big. All in all, Lily took on a heavy responsibility that shouldn't be taken on at her age. Wuming's mind was thinking, and a light flashed in his eyes. Time to do something. Wuming's reaction was self-reflection, but Rinha Black Rabbit's reaction was different from Wuming's. Both of their expressions became gloomy. Mr. Villo, I'm really sorry for troubling you. Ren said rather embarrassedly. Immediately after, Black Rabbit also spoke in embarrassment. Young Master Ren is right. Mr. Villo obviously didn't care about the decline of No Name and joined our community. You even put in so much effort to contribute to No Name. We really don't know how to thank you. The first thing they thought of was not their own community, but their companions, members, who had sacrificed themselves for this family, community. After all, the reason why they risked their lives to protect the community was for their companions and their family. Meanwhile, this family member in front of them had made a sacrifice that would be highly appreciated by any other community for the sake of the community. Meanwhile, their community didn't have the ability to repay this family member and could only ask for more. This made the Rinha Black Rabbit very upset, especially the Black Rabbit who was full of dedication as a member of the Uetu clan. However, in the face of their guilt, Wuming could not help but laugh. "What are you guys talking about?" In an instant, Wuming had a matter-of-fact look on his face. "Do I need a reward for my family? Isn't this a matter of course?" Ren, Black Rabbit, and even Lily beside them and Letitia behind Wuming were all stunned. That's right. For the sake of the family members and companions were all selfless contributions. It wasn't about how long a family member contributed, nor was it about how little other family members contributed. However, because of Wuming's strength, Ren and the others subconsciously treated Wuming as a guest of honor. This caused them to feel guilty. "I actually don't have much ambition. Even if I've experienced a lot of adventures in other worlds and defeated a lot of powerhouses, I don't think many people know me," Wuming recalled with a smile. Whether it was the world of Type Moon or other worlds, Wuming could be said to be not very famous. In the alternate world of Nazalic, Wuming was at most a kind and powerful recluse who had subordinates who were not weaker than him. At most, his reputation was only promoted by the Golden Princess in Ristage. The commoners only knew that there was a powerhouse. Furthermore, Wuming strictly forbade Nazalic from breaking ties with the outside world. Other than Sebastian, the upper echelons of the Ristage Kingdom, and some special people, Wuming was only famous in Nazalic. In the world of the God's Layers, ordinary people did not know about the God's Layers at all. Even if Wuming was the last king, he was only famous in the magic circle. However, being famous was one thing. Those who knew Wuming and had seen Wuming were few. In the alternate world where they competed for the Star Cup, other than Rick's group of humans, only Shobi and the Skywings knew him. Although other races also knew of Wuming's existence, Wuming did not know whether they had seen Wuming or not. Not only that, but other than Rick, the humans also treated him as an ordinary refugee. However, looking at Wuming's history, he was actually quite famous in a sense. In the world of the Type Moon, the powerhouses were all existences of the Root Dragon, and other worlds also had people who knew of Wuming's fame although they had not seen him before. It was just that Wuming had never thought of being famous. Wuming's original thoughts were only to become stronger and return home. Now, he had returned home, and his strength had changed. His current goal was to get rid of Gidia, the hidden danger. However, that was the big goal, and Wuming's current small goal was to develop No Name first. "I'm a part of this family." Wuming smiled in return. Mr. Villo. Black Rabbit and the others did not know what to say. In short, they were touched. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Wuming began his performance. "Also, the money I donated to No Name before, I never thought of asking you to return it." Wuming looked at Ren and Black Rabbit with a look of negotiation. "Why don't we just forget about it?" Wuming said with a smile. However, Black Rabbit was the first to disagree. "How can we do that, Mr. Villo? We already said that we would borrow it. How can we go back on our words?" They always felt that Black Rabbit was the one who borrowed the money, and Wuming was the one who borrowed the money. "That's right, Mr. Villo, we must return this money." Ren also had a determined expression. Yes, do as you please." Wuming replied with a bitter smile. Sure enough, the one who owed money was the boss, and they had to listen to the boss. Seeing that Wuming's debt dispute had ended, the three problem children began to become active. Then, Black Rabbit, let's talk about our direct problem. 16 Knights of Reverse smiled at Black Rabbit with a terrifying smile. What? Black Rabbit was confused. She did not know how she offended this group of people. Of course it's because you kept talking about Willow and neglected our matter, Black Rabbit. Zhou Yuanfei now pointed out the problem. After all, the three of them continuously participated in the gift competition, which was also a great help to No Name. Not mentioning us made me unhappy. That's why Black Rabbit needs to be punished. Haruai Toshi said lightly. Ah. The Black Rabbit looked at the three problem children in shock and let out a cry of surprise. No. Chapter 6:15. Ren panicked and wanted to stop them, but he couldn't do anything as he watched the three problem children bully the Black Rabbit. Wuming, Letitia, and Lily went to the houses of No Name. Wuming's intention was to renovate No Name's house as well. After all, it was a bit awkward to have a bunch of broken houses on such a large piece of land. Therefore, with Ren's approval, Wuming followed Lily to the houses. Master, do you know how to repair houses? Letitia asked respectfully. But it sounded like she was doubtful. Master, these houses don't have any life force, and many of them have already collapsed. It will be difficult to repair them. Hearing Letitia's words, Wuming looked at some of the collapsed houses on the outskirts of No Name's territory. No Name was once the largest community in the East District. Therefore, this piece of land that was once the largest community in the East District was naturally huge. It was impossible to only build a few houses in the center, there must be some houses in the entire territory. But because of the Demon King's attack, as well as the desolation of the land, it was already very difficult for the people of No Name to repair the houses in the center. Therefore, in these 3 years, the houses in No Name's territory were basically not repaired by the people of No Name. Therefore, these houses had already collapsed. Not only that, many of the houses in the center of No Name's territory had also collapsed. As the largest community in the East District, the house in the center was actually quite big. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was a castle. Well, as a box world with many gods and Buddhas, basically every community that was slightly stronger had this kind of Western castle-style residence. The castle was connected to the outside with a huge reservoir. At this moment, the reservoir was filled with incomparably clean water. It was the water provided by defeating the water god and obtaining the water tree sapling. In the beginning, when the Black Rabbit placed the water tree's sapling on the small platform in the middle of the reservoir, the water that instantly covered the entire reservoir made the birds from the past excited for a while. The clean reservoir complemented the land that was full of life, but it was surrounded by castle-like houses that looked like they had been abandoned for a long time. This was an existence that was rather inconsistent with the land and the pool. Therefore, Wuming decided to first repair the houses here and then take care of the other houses. Letitia, I really don't have the ability to repair houses. Looking at these castle-like houses that look like dilapidated houses, Silent Wonder spoke to Letitia without looking back. Lily, who was listening on the side, was stunned. So embarrassing, why did you come back if you don't have the ability to repair houses? But Letitia was waiting for Wuming to continue. But we have this. Wuming raised his arm, and the small golem statue appeared once again. Without saying anything, Wuming directly infused magic power into the stone statue. The moment the statue's eyes to Letitia, the statues to be activated. Then, a dark purple ripple appeared beside Wuming. It was a skill that Wuming often used, portal. However, this wasn't a portal. It was a passage that Wuming created to spawn magic puppets. You see, isn't Yggdrasil a game? Basically, all the ripples in this game are in the form of portals. They are all purplish-black ripples. Although it was a bit of a shoddy job, at least it was useful. It could spawn monsters. Suddenly, a stone pillar came out of the dark purple portal. Taking a closer look, it wasn't a stone pillar. It was clearly the leg of a magic puppet. Then, a 5-meter-tall stone giant with red eyes and a body made of hard white stone walked out and stood beside Wuming. Then, silent cries stopped channeling mana into the golem statue in his hand, and the purple-black ripples disappeared. Of course, it wasn't that Wuming didn't want to work anymore. He just wanted to see if this magic puppet could meet his requirements. Go, repair the damaged house. Wuming ordered the magic puppet. Originally, monsters that were summoned by a tool that could summon unlimited monsters wouldn't listen to the summoner's orders. However, magic puppets were different. In the game Yggdrasil, they wouldn't move unless there was a master or a leader who gave the order. Normally, the magic puppet would be in a standby state. Only when a high-level magic creature or its master gave it an order would the magic puppet begin to move according to the order given. Therefore, Yggdrasil originally didn't have a tool that could summon magic puppets like this. However, after Wuming found out that there was a tool that could summon unlimited demons, Wuming created a tool that could summon magic puppets based on that tool. Well, actually, it was because Wuming was tired of making magic puppets one by one during the battle against Darius. Even with the help of Ain Zurgong, Wuming didn't have to make magic puppets one by one. That was a very troublesome thing for Wuming. Therefore, Wuming used his own grand creation item to create a modified version of the magic puppet unlimited summoning tool based on the tool that could summon unlimited demons. By controlling the amount of magic power released, one could control the number of magic puppets that could be produced. One could also choose the type of magic puppet that could be produced. Another thing was that it could be turned off or turned on at any time. The tool that could summon unlimited demons couldn't be turned off once it was started. Therefore, it was a very rare tool. Wuming's tool was even more cheat-like. It could be turned on or off at any time. In addition to being able to control the amount and speed of production, and choose the type of magic puppet that could be produced, this tool was comparable to a god-tier tool. If it wasn't for the fact that the magic puppets produced weren't very strong, they would be close to a world-class tool. All in all, the monsters produced by this tool could be controlled. Otherwise, Wuming wouldn't be at ease to give it to children. After hearing Wuming's words, the magic puppet immediately walked towards the house in front of it. Because of its weight, every step the magic puppet took shook the ground. If it wasn't for Wuming giving life to the ground and making the ground solid, the magic puppet would have probably sunk into the sand and left a footprint on the ground. In short, the magic puppet began its performance. Chapter 6:16. Oh, so this is the magic puppet you summoned with your item. It looks quite sturdy. I wonder if it can take a punch from me. I'm getting excited. 16 Knights, who was attracted by the magic puppet, walked to Wuming with her arms crossed. Please don't attack it. If you punch it, it will probably be reduced to rubble. Wuming looked at 16 Knights helplessly. At this time, Ku Osaka's voice came from the other side of Wuming. Ku Osaka patted Wuming's arm with excitement and curiosity. The stone giant in the fairy tale. I didn't expect to see one in the Hakata world. This is the first time I've seen one. As expected, a common monster like the stone giant would be the most familiar monster in the eyes of ordinary people. Yes, then can you stop hitting me? Wuming resisted powerlessly. Although he wouldn't get hurt, it didn't feel good. I didn't expect you to be so chaste. 16 Knights also looked at Ku Osaka with a mocking expression. How would a villain like you understand my interest? Ku Osaka didn't back down and replied to 16 Knights, but her eyes were still on the magic puppet. From Wuming's point of view, Ku Osaka didn't look like someone who was interested in fairy tales. She looked more like someone who was interested in strange creatures. This probably had something to do with Ku Osaka's era. After World War II, there probably wasn't much entertainment. This was especially true for Jiu Yuanfei, who was the young mistress of the family. She must have been extremely busy back then. Wu Ming guessed. However, Wu Ming's guess was the opposite of the truth. Kuo Asuka, who had the ability to control, wasn't bothered by her responsibilities as a young lady. How is it going to repair the damaged house? Haruai Hibu asked. Since 16 nights and Kuo Asuka had lost interest in the Black Rabbit, then Haruai Hibu, who was a problem child, naturally followed along. Wu Ming looked at the Black Rabbit that was being supported by Ren with pity. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he shook his head. Then, Wu Ming answered Haruai Hibu's question. It naturally has its own unique method. I guarantee that it will be unexpected and reasonable. Wu Ming crossed his arms and waited for the magic puppet's performance. The magic puppet walked up to No Name, which was a huge building that looked like a castle, and slowly stopped in front of it. Because the other members of No Name had taken care of it for the past 3 years, the castle-like building only had some minor damage and color faded. However, the magic puppet didn't care how it was damaged or how badly it was damaged. It only knew that it needed to fix this place. Then, the magic puppet itself disintegrated. That's right, the stone golem had disintegrated into a pile of rubble. These rubble combined with the rubble of the collapsed walls, and under the influence of its own mana, the rubble wrapped around the castle-shaped building. In an instant, the 5-meter-tall stone giant, at the cost of losing its own body, repaired the building that looked damaged. Even the outer walls of the castle were rearranged by the stone giant's stone pieces. The missing parts were repaired, and the old parts were disintegrated by the magic puppet into fine dust. The entire outer wall was repaired by the magic puppet, and it looked like a newly built building. This is really not simple. This stone giant's limbs are developed, but its brain is quite good. Black Rabbit, who was being supported by Wu Ming, commented on the magic puppet summoned by Wu Ming. Seeing that she had just been played by the 3 problem children, Wu Ming didn't want to complain about the Black Rabbit anymore. In fact, it was because Wu Ming had given the magic puppet a command in advance. If there was a hole, it would be repaired. If there was a hole, it would be repaired. If there was a hole, it would be repaired. If there was a hole, it would be repaired. In short, as long as there was an imperfect place, the magic puppet would find it and repair it. But this way, the efficiency has increased by a lot. Ren nodded as he looked at the magic puppet's repaired wall. There wasn't the slightest gap in the wall, it looked like a natural whole piece. Every piece of broken stone was tightly entwined with the building due to the influence of mana. It didn't look like it was made up of large pieces of broken stone. But, if we use these magic puppets to repair all the buildings, won't it cause the building to collapse later? Haruai Hibu asked. Don't worry, the magic puppet's magic power will change the gaps between itself and the building it is attached to. It can fuse the two together. After a while, when the magic puppet's magic power is exhausted, it will fuse into the same material. Wu Ming's words made everyone feel relieved. Then, let's continue, everyone. Wu Ming wasn't talking about the no-name people, but the magic puppets. Wu Ming began to inject magic power into the magic puppet in his hand again. This time, the amount of magic power injected was quite large. In an instant, a black and purple ripple appeared, and several 5-meter-tall figures walked out from it. It was the mass-produced version of the stone giant from the very beginning. When these stone giants came out, they each ran to the no-name houses. After the first batch of magic puppets left the ripple space, the second batch of magic puppets walked out with their hard legs, shaking the earth. In this way, Wu Ming continued to inject magic power into the magic puppet in his hand, and the same stone giant magic puppets came out from the black and purple ripple space. Looking at the no-name territory that seemed to have become a breeding ground for stone giants, everyone didn't know what to say. Actually, when the second batch of stone giants came out, everyone was already surprised. Well, if it was back to 16 nights, Wuming couldn't see whether he was surprised or not, but everyone was surprised. This was because Wuming's magic puppets summoned too many stone giants, and it didn't seem to stop. These stone giants were at most 6 digits, and 5 digits was impossible. However, if there was a community with countless 6-digit stone giants, then that community would be at the top of the 6-digit stone giants. Maybe even a 5-digit stone giant could try to level up. When Wuming said that he had a magic puppet that could summon an unlimited number of monsters, everyone was surprised, but they had never seen such a scene, so their surprise wasn't that high. However, after seeing such a scene, it was really shocking. There was no other way, these countless stone giants were really too spectacular. Ren thought for a moment, and began to mobilize. Since it's like this, then everyone, let's do a big cleaning of the no-name today. Oh! Of course, it was Black Rabbit who shouted this. It was still very awkward in the situation where everyone was silent. However, this time it was a little better. Not only was Black Rabbit shouting, Lily was also embarrassed with her. Chapter 6:17. In the evening, the sun had set. The entire no-name had entered a world of darkness. Wuming and the others stood in front of the brand new, no-name base, full of joy and gratification as they looked at the renovated castle that looked brand new. This is great, our community finally has some semblance of what it used to be. Black Rabbit bounced around the group happily, just like a rabbit. That was indeed the case. No Name was built 3 years ago. Although it wasn't very luxurious, it still had a grand atmosphere, unlike now where the land was abandoned and the buildings were damaged. Therefore, after Wuming used the magic puppets to roughly repair the no-name buildings, a brand new and more simple building complex appeared in front of everyone. This made the original no-name members quite moved. There was nothing more exciting than falling from a high place to a low place and then climbing back up. Not to mention Black Rabbit, Letitia, and the other old members of No Name, even the new members like 16 Knights had a satisfied look on their faces. However, at the beginning, they had a shameless look on their faces as they refused to do it. What was going on? The situation was like this. When Ren proposed a thorough cleaning, everyone readily agreed, except for the 3 problem children, who were unwilling. Boring, not doing it. I'm a lady. If the 2 of them don't want to do it, then I don't want to do it either. Then, when Wuming suggested that they could command the small magic puppets to clean, the 3 problem children's eyes lit up. Then, he led the special-shaped magic puppet that Wuming had summoned with an item and left to clean up the mess. They were very interested in magic puppets, so how could they let go of such an opportunity to command magic puppets? As for the special magic puppets, they were basically the size of a person, large enough to walk into a house. There were no such magic puppets in Yggdrasil, but they couldn't resist Wuming's methods. Even the tools were modified by Wuming himself, so adding some special magic puppets was no problem at all. After all, magic puppets could be casually made. The essence of a magic puppet was a pile of rocks. Fire magic puppets, steel magic puppets, and the like were just a pile of rocks with a ball of flame or a large amount of iron added to it. Just like that, Wuming, Letitia, and Lily repaired the buildings on the outside, while Ren, Black Rabbit, and the 3 problem children cleaned up the inside. With almost unlimited magic puppets, whether it was repairing the buildings on the outside or cleaning on the inside, with these magic puppets and other people's commands, the efficiency could be said to be quite fast. If that wasn't the case, they wouldn't have been able to clean up all the buildings in No Name's territory in less than a day. By the way, while a large number of magic puppets were working, they also attracted the attention of more than 100 children from No Name. When the children asked for the reason, Wuming directly pushed the credit to Ren, making Ren, as the leader of the community, rise in the children's hearts. This made Ren somewhat helpless, but after all, Wuming had already said it, and even through the tools that were always activated into Ren's hands. In the end, Ren had no choice but to admit it on the spot. Wuming nodded his head in satisfaction as he stood in front of the majestic, no-name, white building complex that was filled with an ancient aura. Although the color is a bit monotonous, at least the quality is not bad. How could the quality be bad when using bricks worth 6 digits to build a house? It was already very extravagant, okay? After all, Villo, you only summoned white magic puppets, how could the color not be monotonous? As a sensitive beauty, Jiao Fei Niao was very dissatisfied with the pure white bricks provided by Wuming. After all, rendering multiple colors was the most suitable color for a beautiful girl. That's too troublesome, it's more efficient to only produce the same type of magic puppet. Wuming shrugged his shoulders. Just like Gorgon, who had Tiamat's 100 beast power, she only produced the same type of magic beast at the beginning, but after a long time, she began to produce other types of magic beast. Because of the high efficiency. Wuming was the same, copying and pasting the same magic puppet would definitely be more efficient than creating a different type. Although this was a tool that could summon unlimited magic puppets, after all, this was a tool that Wuming had modified himself, and Wuming's setting was that the user could choose the type of magic puppet. All in all, the final result was very good. Alright, we've been busy for a day, and the results are not bad, everyone go rest. At this time, Ren came out to show his effectiveness as a leader. That's true, this is the result of everyone's hard work, if we don't go in and try, we'll be wasting our efforts. Black Rabbit playfully closed one of her eyes and said to everyone. After all, what she said made sense, and it was already late, so everyone entered the finished building. As soon as they entered, they saw some magic puppets standing like guards in the no-name hole. These were the magic puppets that Wuming had specially created to clean the interior of the problem children. When all the buildings were repaired, Wuming had also taught Ren to stop summoning magic puppets. And because these magic puppets didn't need to sacrifice their own bodies to repair the buildings, they were only used as coolies for cleaning, so these magic puppets didn't disappear. And now, they were standing like guards in the building, so it was probably the work of the 3 problem children. Everyone looked at 16 Knights and the other 2. 16 Knights and the other 2 didn't panic at all. Isn't this great, magic puppet guards? 16 Knights waved his hand. It's not a good habit to waste things. Jiao Yuao crossed her arms and said seriously, after all, they couldn't just let these magic puppets stand outside or waste them. This looks pretty good. Haruai Hiroyuki didn't feel that he did anything wrong, so he had an innocent expression. Being guards isn't bad, after all. These magic puppets have 6-digit strength, so they're still useful for the current no-name. After all, having a group of 6-digit guards was quite beneficial for the no-name, which was 95% children. Just like when guards sent people to capture the no-name children, if Wuming, 16 Knights, and the others weren't there, there was a high chance that they would have succeeded. Although Black Rabbit wasn't weak, she wasn't good at playing dirty. If she couldn't find those people, Black Rabbit couldn't do anything, right? Then, everyone, go to sleep. Ren said with concern. However, the 3 problem children and Wuming didn't move. Master? Letitia asked doubtfully. Following Wuming's gaze, Ren, Letitia, and the others looked at the table. There was a letter on it, and the symbol was a Valkyrie looking at each other. That was the symbol of this and yes. However, Ren, Black Rabbit, and the others had the same thought. It's over. Chapter 6:18. Why was it over? Because it was a letter from that and yes, and no name, and that and yes didn't have much contact. The only contact they had was with White Yiksha. Therefore, this letter was most likely sent by White Yiksha, and for White Yiksha to send a letter, something must have happened. The unknown was like catmint to a cat. It was quite attractive to children. And being targeted by problem children was a disaster in the eyes of benevolent Black Rabbit. It wasn't enough that he had harmed his own family, now he had to go out and harm others. Therefore, Black Rabbit's hair color changed, and then he suddenly jumped in the direction of the letter. Black Rabbit wanted to keep the letter in his pocket in advance. In short, he couldn't let the 3 problem children see the contents of the letter first. However, although Black Rabbit was fast, he couldn't beat 16 Knights. 16th Knights also jumped, but compared to Black Rabbit's jump, 16th Knight's jump was much more impressive. A strong hurricane swept past the no-name people, blowing their sleeves. The most pitiful one was Jiu Fei Niao, who was desperately holding on to her dress. Then, Wu Ming considerately waved his hand, cancelling out the hurricane caused by 16 Knight's jump. Thanks. Jiu Fei Niao casually but elegantly responded to Wu Ming's gentlemanly behavior. You're welcome. Wu Ming shook his head indifferently. After a simple exchange, the two's gazes returned to the battle between 16 Knights and Black Rabbit for the letter. 16 Knights and Black Rabbit were already in front of the letter, but if one looked closely, 16 Knights was in the lead. Damn it! For the future of the community, Black Rabbit will definitely not give this letter to Mr. 16 Knights. Black Rabbit suddenly exploded again. Oh! You're quite motivated. If you want to stop me for the future of the community, then come and try. 16 Knights laughed wantonly, and then suddenly sped up. The two reached out a hand almost at the same time, reaching for the letter on the table. But an accident happened. The shockwave from the impact of the powerful speed directly shattered the fragile table, and the envelope was blown to the side. 16 Knights and Black Rabbit quickly adjusted their bodies and turned to the other side of the envelope. However, the position of the envelope was now closer to 16 Knights, which made Black Rabbit panic. Just as 16 Knights was about to touch the envelope, a small black-purple ripple suddenly appeared under the envelope and devoured it. This caused 16 Knights to frown, while Black Rabbit heaved a sigh of relief. This was because no matter who got the letter, it couldn't fall into the hands of a problem child. Hey! Little brother, what do you mean by this? Are you trying to pick a fight with me? 16 Knights turned around and glared at Wu Ming. He saw that Wu Ming was holding the envelope that had been swallowed by the blackish-purple ripple, and a small blackish-purple ripple was slowly disappearing above Wu Ming's arm. What? Mr. Villo. This made Black Rabbit, who had just heaved a sigh of relief, tense up again. Looking at it now, the small blackish-purple ripple was indeed his ability to teleport. The Black Rabbit reacted. It's over. Black Rabbit's ears drooped. Although Wu Ming said that he was stable during this period, Black Rabbit still couldn't forget that Wu Ming's nature was also a problem child. Alright, half a problem. However, half a problem child was still a problem child. At this moment, Black Rabbit's back was already gray, and she seemed to have seen the end of the community. You don't have to be so dramatic. Wu Ming shrugged. Don't worry, I won't give it to the 3 problem children, just trust me. Wu Ming's words gave Black Rabbit hope. Mr. Villo. Black Rabbit looked at Wu Ming, touched. It seemed that half a problem child wouldn't mix with a real problem child. Then, Wu Ming gave Black Rabbit a, trust me, look, and then looked at 16 Knights. Stealing the other party's prey would definitely make the other party unhappy. Even if it was Wu Ming, 16 Knights wouldn't forgive it. Then, Wu Ming smiled at 16 Knights, opened the envelope, and read 10 lines at a glance. Black Rabbit was surprised at Wu Ming's action of opening the letter. However, if Wu Ming could not tell 16 Knights and the others the content, then she could understand. Then, Wu Ming read the main content of the letter under Black Rabbit's petrified figure. I see, the North District is holding a fire dragon birth ceremony. this is an invitation letter from White Yiksha. Fire Dragon Birth Ceremony. Jo Yuasuke and Haruai Hiroyuki were confused. Including the North District's art and crafts, as well as the appraisal, there will be many gift competitions, and the central event is scheduled to be a large-scale ceremony for the rulers of the class. That's what the letter says, but I think 16 knights should be interested. Wuming squinted his eyes and smiled at reverse 16 knights. At the same time, he revealed a meaningful smile. Of course, I'm very interested in it. 16 Knights Against the Wind laughed. Then, Black Rabbit cried. You problematic children ah! After Letitia and Lily comforted Black Rabbit, everyone returned to their rooms to sleep. Although the three problem children were indeed too excited to sleep, even though Black Rabbit was crying, she still shouldered the heavy responsibility of being the mother of no-name problem children and kept the letter. If you want to go to the North District to participate in the Fire Dragon birth ceremony, then go to sleep. Under Black Rabbit's reprimand, the three problematic children gave her face and returned to their rooms to sleep. Wuming also returned to his room with Letitia under Black Rabbit's resentful gaze. However, Black Rabbit was helpless. Wuming didn't lie to her. Wuming didn't show 16 Knights and the other two problematic children the letter. He read it out for the three problematic children. After all, Wuming followed the rules, so Black Rabbit couldn't say anything. She could only use her eyes to express her silent resentment. As for Wuming bringing Letitia back to his room, it was naturally because the maid had to help the master change his clothes to sleep. Of course, although accompanying the master to sleep was within Letitia's acceptable range as a maid, after all, Wuming didn't have that intention. Therefore, when Wuming began to sleep, Letitia left Wuming's room. However, Letitia, who had the key to Wuming's room, still stood in front of Wuming the next morning before he woke up. When Wuming opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was this pretty lowly girl in front of him. It's morning. Wuming shook his head, trying to wake up. Yes, master. It's already morning. 16 Knights and the others can't wait. This made Wuming smile helplessly. Then let's exhaust their patience. Then, Letitia helped Wuming wash up and change his clothes. Let's go, Letitia. Let's see how the problematic children are doing. Chapter 6:19. After quickly finishing his breakfast, Wuming went to the hall where the members of No Name usually gathered. Then, Wuming opened the door and walked in with Letitia. Hey. Bro, we woke up so early without the blonde lowly's service. Why did you wake up so late? As soon as he entered, Wuming heard 16 Knights teasing him. It's obviously the three of you who are too excited. My biological clock is normal. He helplessly glanced at 16 Knights, Jo Yuki, and Haruai Hibakushi before casually finding a sofa to sit down. Letitia made Wuming some black tea. Give me a cup too, thank you. Seeing Letitia's action, Jo Yuki smiled and raised her hand. Me too. Haruai Hibakushi's delicate little face sparkled with interest. He looked like a kitten that was interested in the black tea. Then give me a cup too. 16 Knights naturally didn't have much interest in the black tea, but since everyone ordered it, he also ordered a cup with the intention of tasting it. What do you think Letitia is? She's my personal maid. Wuming said with slight jealousy. At the same time, he narrowed his eyes and helplessly looked at the three problem children. Ha! That's funny. I won, Letitia. It's just that you used your ability to take advantage of the loophole. 16 Knights responded uncomfortably. Letitia ruined the gift competition that we were going to participate in. Making some black tea as compensation shouldn't be a problem. Jo Yuki hit the main point. That's right. Villo is so stingy. Haruai Hibikushi hugged the three-furred cat and looked at Wuming with disdain. The three problem children's counterattack made Wuming not know whether to laugh or cry. "You're the only one with a lot of twisted logic," Wuming replied unyieldingly. After that, he didn't say anything else. Letitia also brewed black tea for 4 people. The conversation between the 4 of them was just a casual joke. Therefore, Letitia still brewed black tea for 16 nights and the others. Then, while Letitia was making tea, Wuming started talking to 16 nights and the other 2. "Where's Ren and Black Rabbit? The 2 of them should have woken up already. Why don't I see them?" Wuming asked. Because Black Rabbit had a problem child in No Name, he woke up very early every day in order to supervise the problem child. As for Ren, he also showed a slightly excited expression yesterday. After all, Ren was still an 11-year-old child, and it was inevitable that he would be interested in the sacrifice. Therefore, Wuming judged that the 2 of them must have woken up. Moreover, they had agreed to go to White Yiksha's place today to see how the fire dragon's birth ceremony was going. As the leader of the community, Ren he had to look after the 3 problem children. It was impossible for Black Rabbit to be absent. Ren went to the library after breakfast. Black Rabbit is helping Lily and the others with farming. Haruai Hiroyuki answered Wuming's question. As the leader of the community, Ren naturally seized the time to learn all kinds of knowledge. Therefore, it was understandable that he went to the underground library after breakfast to learn. Black Rabbit's words were also understandable. While repairing the buildings, Wuming also gave the magic puppet authority to the members of No Name. Naturally, this included Lily and the others. With the magic puppets, Lily and the other logistics team could cultivate crops more easily. Therefore, taking advantage of this opportunity, Lily took a few magic puppets to the city early in the morning. She used the event funds to buy various kinds of crop seeds and seedlings. Then, she let the magic puppets bring a lot of seeds and seedlings. It had to be said that this time, Lily was in the limelight of No Name. A 6-digit number was already a very strong existence among the 7-digit number. Everyone in the city knew that Lily, a normal member of No Name, actually had a few 6-digit magic puppets. This naturally caused a huge uproar. However, it seemed that some people had found out through the grapevine that a strong person had joined No Name. Everyone no longer viewed No Name as a group of trash. Therefore, there were no more attempts to steal Lily's magic puppet from them. However, this time, No Name's reputation was one step higher. After that, Lily, who came back, breathed a sigh of relief and began to cultivate. As a restless black rabbit, she naturally had to find something for herself to do. Moreover, with such a large piece of land, how could she not use it properly? Now was not the same as before. Now, there was no lack of labor, seeds, water, soil, everything was available. Therefore, the little fox girl Lily began to cultivate with a dozen or so slightly older children. Black Rabbit also began to plan the use of No Name's land. Then, Wuming's eyes turned cold. He found a problem. It seemed that everyone woke up earlier than him. After realizing this, Wuming felt a little awkward. Lily had already woken up early, and so did Black Rabbit. Although Ren was a child, he did not want to disappoint the community after the renovation, so he directly woke up early and began to bury his head in the library. The 3 problem children were so excited that they could not sleep and woke up early, so he directly ignored them. "They are all working hard," Wuming said as he picked up the black tea that Letitia brewed and drank it. After all, there are many things to be done in the community. This is normal. Jiu Fei Niao also drank the black tea that Letitia brewed. "Not bad, Letitia. I am a little envious of the Villo," Jiu Fei Niao said with jealousy. "If Fei Niao still wants to drink, I can make some for you in the future." Letitia smiled slightly. Really? Then it's a deal. Jiu Fei Niao's eyes lit up and then continued to drink the tea. Beside Jiu Fei Niao, Haruai Hiroyuki dipped his finger in the tea and put it in front of Sanmao's mouth to let Sanmao taste it first. Sanmao said that it smells good. Haruai Hiroyuki had the ability to communicate with animals, so no one thought that it was strange for her to talk to a cat. As long as you like it. Letitia nodded with a smile. On the other side of the single-seater sofa opposite Wu Ming, the villainous 16 Knights Reverse drank the black tea in a very standard manner. Ha! This black tea is really good. Reverse 16 Knights Reverse praised. Of course, this was the black tea that Luos drank in Perseus. With that hedonistic second-generation heir's spirit of enjoyment, this tea would definitely be of excellent quality. I really underestimated you, 16 Kun. I didn't expect a villainess like you to have such good taste in black tea. Jiu Fei now tasted the fragrance of the tea. Indeed, Reverse 16 Knights Reverse did not seem like a newbie's tea drinking method, but more like a veteran aristocrat who had been drinking for a long time. Because I am a villainous person with such good taste. Reverse 16 Knights Reverse shamelessly smiled. At this moment, the door was opened. A pair of blue rabbit ears entered the four's eyes. Everyone, are you ready? We are going to visit Lord Byakuya. Then, the four, including Wu Ming, smiled confidently. Of course. 4. Chapter 620. Thousand Eyes Branch. Wu Ming, Letitia, 16th Knights, Flying Bird, Dazzle, Ren, and Black Rabbit sat in a row. And in front of the 6 of them sat White Yiksha. Thou came rather quickly. White Yiksha used a paper fan to cover the lower half of his face. His eyes were slightly closed as though he had just woken up. After all, we have quite a number of problem children here. Furthermore, it's a grand memorial. There's nothing wrong with being a little more proactive, right? Wu Ming joked with White Yiksha. Indeed. White Yiksha glanced at 16 Knights and the other 2. During this period of time, the names of the 3 problem children of no name were well known in the lower levels of the East District. Even White Yiksha had heard of them. Then, White Yiksha, it's about time you tell us the truth. 16th Knights didn't mind White Yiksha's gaze as he asked a question that puzzled Ren and Black Rabbit. What do you mean? Black Rabbit's ears perked up as he asked. Ren and Black Rabbit couldn't understand 16th Knights' words. From their point of view, it was only because of No Name's strength that they were invited by White Yiksha, who was the ruler of the social strata. Although your thoughts aren't wrong, how can it be that simple? It could only be said that their thoughts were too easy to guess. 16th Knights could tell at a glance. First of all, there's a problem with this fire dragon's birth ritual. Then, 16th Knights looked at Wu Ming. Brother, you should be able to tell, right? Wu Ming nodded. It's clearly a ceremony in the North District, but it has to be held together with the East District. There's clearly a problem. With that, Ren and Black Rabbit also understood. That's right. Although the relationship between the various strata wasn't bad, it wasn't good either. No, it should be said that they didn't interfere with each other and didn't interact with each other. After all, the difference was too great. Even if they wanted to interact, it was very difficult. Therefore, even if it was a rare grand memorial in the North District, there was no need to hold it together with the East District. Furthermore, you even called us over. I'm afraid there's something special you need us to do. Then, 16th Knight smiled. I can't wait. However, the smile of this problematic child made Black Rabbit and Ren a little worried. Oh, your thoughts are still very clear, Villo and 16 Knights of Reverse. White Yiksha praised the two of them. But even if nothing happened, I was prepared to invite all of you to this memorial ceremony. In other words, did something really happen, Lord White Yiksha? Black Rabbit began to feel nervous. Before I begin to explain this matter, I'll say that I received the invitation before the preparations for this memorial ceremony. This was also why White Yiksha said that he would invite no name even if there was no emergency. However, some time ago, a member of Thous and Yes who had been sleeping suddenly woke up and made a prophecy. Immediately after, Bai Yiksha's expression froze. A devil king will attack during the fire dragon birth ceremony. As soon as he said that, Rinha and Hei Tu's face tightened. The three problem children became excited. Only Wu Ming's face did not change. May I ask how accurate the prophecy is? Haruhito Hikari asked. After all, a prophecy was just a prophecy. There were times when things like this were wrong, although it was rare. Rinha and Hei Tu looked at White Yiksha's answer expectantly. Having experienced the Devil King's attack, they felt lucky about this prophecy. 100%. White Yiksha's words were like a sharp blade that pierced into Rinha and Hei Tu's hearts, shattering their expectations. It's a pity. Although I also want to treat this prophecy as that member's wrong prophecy, that member's prophecies have always been 100% successful. There has never been a single failure. This is really a regrettable result. 16th Knights of Reverse said casually, sounding like he was gloating. However, everyone present understood that this was the characteristic of a problematic child like 16th Knights of Reverse. To put it nicely, he spoke without mercy. To put it bluntly, he had a foul mouth. Lord White Yiksha, did you specifically look for us because of the Devil King's attack? Black Rabbit appeared serious and serious. After all, he was a Devil King. He could not afford to relax at all. Of course. Didn't you use defeating the Devil King as your common slogan? Then, you have to be more realistic. Otherwise, you will become a joke to others. White Yiksha chuckled, looking rather wretched. Of course, before you make a move on the Devil King, I will take care of him, White Yiksha said proudly. Wu Ming had learned some things about White Yiksha in advance, so Wu Ming did not doubt White Yiksha's arrogant words at all. Even 16th Knights, Flying Bird, and Radiance had learned about White Yiksha after living in this world for so long. Sun and White Knight Star Spirit, originally a two-digit Devil King, materialized by the heavenly shaking prophecy. Furthermore, even if his strength was negated and weakened because of the heavenly shaking prophecy, his combat strength could still be ranked in the top 10. In order to reassure the gods and Buddhas, he voluntarily lowered his spirit level and accepted the Yiksha divinity of Buddhism, becoming the current ruler of the East District. Although White Yiksha's strength was weakened again after accepting the Yiksha divinity of Buddhism, he was not someone that any Tom, Dick, or Harry could ignore. At the very least, one had to have a 3-digit strength to be able to compete with the current White Yiksha. In other words, if the number of Devil Kings attacking at the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony was below 3 digits, then there was no chance of winning against White Yiksha. And if a 3-digit Devil King appeared in the lower levels, the gods and Buddhas in the upper levels would not sit idly by. White Yiksha accepted the Yiksha divinity and weakened her strength because she wanted to become the ruler of the lower levels with a 2-digit strength and protect the people. Otherwise, the gods and Buddhas in the upper levels would not allow her to descend. Although White Yiksha was said to be the strongest in the middle and lower levels, Wu Ming was still a little worried. Don't underestimate the enemy, White Yiksha. The news that you will host the biggest gift competition with the ruler of the North District must have spread. It's impossible that the attacking Devil King did not receive the news. Although Wu Ming did not finish his sentence, everyone understood what Wu Ming meant. Knowing that White Yiksha would attend the North District's grand memorial ceremony and still come to attack, this Devil King must have been prepared. Speaking of which, is the reason why the East and North District are holding the ceremony together because of the Devil King's attack? Haruhito Hikari raised his doubts. Then, White Yiksha calmly said something that surprised everyone. Actually, the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony is held by the East and North District in name, but in reality, I'm the only one from the East District. Oh, so that's why you came to us, no name. Chapter 621. North District 54545 Outer Gate, at the entrance of the Here and Yes store. In the distance, a huge red boundary wall that separated the East and North District stood there, and the boundary couldn't be seen on both sides of the boundary wall. Gothic spires were scattered all over the city, and there were traces of reclamation on the boundary wall, and some places were hollowed out as exhibition halls. A large number of glass artworks were placed on the streets and in front of shops. As if to add to the atmosphere, there were candlesticks and clown-like people walking on the streets. Walking candlesticks. Jiroyuki excitedly pulled Haruhi Hiroyuki. It's true, this place is completely different from the East District. Although she wasn't as excited as Jiroyuki, she was still quite surprised. It seemed that the fact that this was the North District had been confirmed. It seems that White Yiksha didn't lie to us, then what was that trick just now? Compared to confirming whether this was the North District, 16 Knights was more interested in White Yiksha's trick. It's just a small trick, the branches of Here and Yes are the same, they all have the ability to transfer to each other. White Yiksha pointed at the branch behind him that was exactly the same as the East District's Here and Yes. So that's how it is. Rinha Black Rabbit nodded. Wuming didn't think that transferring between the North District and East District was as simple as White Yiksha said. Wuming noticed a strong spatial fluctuation. Wuming could determine that no one present except himself and White Yiksha noticed the spatial fluctuation. It seems that White Yiksha really can't be underestimated. Wuming thought. Well, the North District has a completely different culture from the East District, so you should enjoy yourselves before the ceremony begins. After all, if he didn't smooth out the anger of these problem children, they would cause a ruckus when the ceremony officially began. I have something to do, so I'll leave first. White Yiksha waved his hand and left. Seeing 16 Knights and the others' interest, Wuming didn't suppress it, but went along with it. Then, let's start shopping. In fact, this sentence was said to the 3 problem children. Then we'll go first. 16 Knights said goodbye, then walked toward the more prosperous central area with Jiroyuki and Haruhi Hiroyuki. Wait. Wait, Black Rabbit is worried about you walking alone, Black Rabbit wants to follow you. Black Rabbit quickly said, then followed 16 Knights and the others. Sure enough, Black Rabbit was worried that the 3 problem children would cause trouble, so it sacrificed shopping time to supervise them. Wuming shook his head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Then, Wuming looked at Letitia, who was still in her maid uniform. Letitia, you go and help keep an eye on them. Yes, master. Letitia let aside then, Wuming looked at the last person around him, our leader, Ren. Actually, I also want to go for a walk. Ren, what are your plans? Wuming was asking if Ren wanted to be abandoned and walk alone, or to walk with Wuming. That, I want to visit my former ally. Ren awkwardly scratched the back of his head. Ally? Wuming was surprised, then he understood. After all, the predecessor of No Name was the largest community in the East District. It wasn't strange for them to have allies in other districts. Then I'll walk with you. After all, Wuming was slightly interested in this former ally. Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Villo. Ren nodded. After all, Ren was only an 11-year-old child. Walking alone in a place he had never been before would definitely cause him to be afraid. On the way to the ally that Ren mentioned, Wuming and Ren began to chat. Speaking of which, Ren. I didn't hear you mention that we have an ally. Wuming put his hands in his pockets, looked forward, and observed the surroundings. He seemed to ask casually. Actually, our no-name has already cut off contact with that ally for 3 years. Ren said without much confidence. Cut off contact, huh? Wuming looked at the surrounding scenery and narrowed his eyes. This made him think of a lot of things. It's the other party who unilaterally broke the contract, right? Wuming still asked casually. But when Ren heard Wuming's words, his body slightly stiffened, then he immediately reacted. Well, after all, we are already no-name. It's not strange that they unilaterally broke the contract, although that was what he said, the dispirited tone in Ren's voice was still obvious. What was the saying, when it rains, it pours? The current situation was exactly what it meant. After the Demon King's attack, the flag, name, and companions were all taken away, and then the other allies unilaterally broke the contract. Wuming believed that this kind of when it rains, it pours situation must have happened many times in the past 3 years. For Ren he and He too to be able to hold on under such circumstances for 3 years, it could be said that the bitterness within was not enough to be told to outsiders. It was impossible to explain it all clearly in a short time. But after all, we are allies. A visit is still necessary, although it's a little. Ren lowered his head and told Wuming. But before Ren could finish, he was interrupted by Wuming. Wuming suddenly put his hand on Ren's shoulder, and Ren subconsciously stopped. Mr. Villo. Ren looked at Wuming in confusion. Don't worry, Ren. If you want to go, then go boldly. I'm not even afraid of White Yiksha. Why would I be afraid of a bad ally who unilaterally broke the contract? Wuming smiled at Ren. Remember, although they looked down on us in the past, we will make them unworthy in the future. Wuming's words made Ren slightly stunned. But Ren did not think that Wuming's words were a bluff. It wasn't just the powerful Wuming, but with 16 knights and the other 2, the rise of no-name was inevitable. Although the 3 of them were problem children, it was much better to do bad things than good things. Let's go, let's meet our ally. Okay. Because there was still some distance to go, Ren told Wuming about the community of this former ally. The 5-digit middle-level community, Salamandra, was based at the place where no-name and the others were at now, the outer gate of 54,545. It was a hereditary community with a flame dragon pattern as its flag. The members of the community had a wide range of viper bloodlines, and at the same time, they dominated many viper species. In short, it was a community based on group strength. Coincidentally, this was the opposite of the current no-name. The current no-name was a community of individual strength. After all, they were few in number but powerful. After Ren told Wuming the basic information, the 2 arrived at the entrance of Salamandra's base. Chapter 622. The base of Salamandra, in front of Wuming and Ren, was not a large and imposing building. However, compared to the ordinary buildings around it, the base of Salamandra was clearly different and had a unique temperament. In front of the gate of the Salamandra base, there were 2 guards with dragon horns on their heads. Their faces were slightly red and ferocious, and they looked ferocious. There was no doubt that these 2 people had a trace of the fire dragon viper's blood in their bodies, which caused their faces to be slightly dragonized. Their faces were slightly red and they had dragon horns on their heads. One of the guards saw Wuming and Ren walk to the front of Salamandra's gate and immediately stopped them. Please stop, this is Salamandra's base, unrelated people are not allowed to enter. Although the guard used the word, please, and his tone was not that bad, it was not friendly at all. After Wuming heard this, he could not help but laugh out loud. Seeing the two guards frowning because of Wu Ming's laughter, Ren nervously pulled on Wu Ming's sleeve, his eyes showing a trace of helplessness. "Big brother, don't laugh, can't you see that his eyes are not right?" Wu Ming read such thoughts from Ren's eyes. However, Wu Ming could not help laughing. Although Ren had only been the leader for 3 years, as the leader of the allied community, the people of Salamandra did not recognize him and even said something like, "Unrelated people, how could Wu Ming not laugh?" However, it could also be confirmed that after Salamandra unilaterally broke the agreement with No Name, they really did not have any contact with No Name. Otherwise, how could the other party not recognize the leader of the allied community? From the time Ren told Wu Ming that Salamandra unilaterally broke the agreement, Wu Ming did not have a good impression of this community. Unilaterally kicking away an ally when it had no value, and without any reason at all, this was not how a person should behave. Although Wu Ming did not know what kind of mentality the leader of Salamandra had when he cooperated with No Name, but Wu Ming knew that the other party did not have any sincerity now. Since this was the case, then Wu Ming did not need to be friendly with the other party. Wu Ming stopped laughing and pressed Ren's shoulder, indicating for him to calm down. Then, Wu Ming looked at the guard. "Salamandra's ally in the East District is here to visit, please inform them." Wu Ming's words were the same as the guard's before. Although his tone was not that bad, it was not friendly either. The guard's tone was not good, Wu Ming and Ren. However, Wu Ming's tone made the guard angry. "How dare you? I have never heard of any alliance between Salamandra and the East District. Hurry up and leave this place. This is the base of Salamandra, we will not allow you people to behave so atrociously." The guard who asked the question earlier had an impatient look on his face and pointed his spear at Wu Ming and Ren. "Hurry up and leave. Salamandra is a middle-class community with a 5-digit number. If you continue to stay here, you will suffer." The other guard was slightly more friendly and did not point his weapon at Wu Ming and Ren. He only waved his hand at the two of them, indicating for them to leave quickly. The two's actions reflected their personalities. It could only be said that they were worthy of having the Fire Dragon Viper's bloodline, their tempers were slightly irritable. Wu Ming was not angry because of these two small characters. Instead, he thought of something else. Since these two people were arranged to guard the door, it meant that their position in Salamandra was not high. It was not wrong for them to not know about the alliance between Salamandra and No Name. Looking at the two's actions, it did not seem like they were lying. In other words, the leader of Salamandra not only unilaterally broke the agreement with No Name, but also blocked the news. But thinking about it, it was not surprising that such a vulgar community could do such a thing. Thinking about this, Wu Ming stopped thinking about it and smiled at the guard who pointed his weapon at him. Bang! As if something exploded, a soft but hurried sound came from the guard's spear. This gave the guard a fright. Then, he realized that his spear had broken. Clang! The spear head fell to the ground and made a sound. Looks like Salamandra's weapon isn't that sturdy. It actually broke on its own after using it for a while. Wu Ming laughed mockingly. You bastard! What kind of strange gift did you use?" The guard whose weapon broke retreated in panic. The other guard next to him held his spear and looked at Wu Ming cautiously. Then, he ordered the guard who retreated 2 steps. Hurry! Hurry and call for help." It seemed that this guard was more experienced than the hot-tempered guard. But in Wu Ming's eyes, he was still very young. Then, after hearing the guard's words, the guard ran away. No, he went to call for help. And the guard who was in a stalemate with Wu Ming had his weapon broken under Wu Ming's smile. You! The guard was shocked and retreated. There was no other way. Wu Ming's invisible telekinesis was too strange. To be honest, what if the next thing to break was his head? At this time, a voice came from the door. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Someone is causing trouble in Salamandra. It seemed that the other side had called for help. Wuming smiled slightly. Mr. Villo, why don't we leave quickly? Ren pulled Wuming's hand unnaturally and whispered. Don't worry, Ren. We came with sincerity today. If they want to cause trouble, then let them come. We are not afraid. Wuming patted Ren's shoulder confidently, indicating that he should be more confident. However, Ren was about to cry. How is this sincerity? You are clearly here to cause trouble. However, Ren also knew that Wuming was half a problem child. Then, Ren gave up persuading Wuming, because the other side's people had already surrounded the two of them. Wuming looked at the people surrounding him with weapons. These people were all members of the Salamandra community who had the blood of the alternative dragon. There were even a few alternative flying dragons in the sky that were ridden by the members of Salamandra. As for Salamandra, it was obvious that they were ganging up on him, which attracted the attention of the surrounding passers-by. Moreover, although Salamandra's base was not in the downtown area, it was not in the suburbs either. Therefore, there were many other shops around. To put it simply, a lot of people had gathered around to watch the fun. Chapter 623. Look, someone is causing trouble in front of Salamandra. What? Someone actually dares to cause trouble. Don't they know that the ceremony hosted by Salamandra will be opening in 2 days? They've hit the nail on the head. Salamandra has been on full alert for the past 2 days. They're afraid that someone will cause trouble. That's right. If they dare to cause trouble during this period of time, they'll be miserable. But they don't seem to be from the North District. Speaking of which, I heard that in order to make the ceremony go smoothly, Salamandra invited the ruler of the East District. Really? The ruler of the East District, Lord White Yiksha, is here. With Wuming's super hearing, Wuming basically heard all the words of the passers-by without missing anything. However, there was one thing that made Wuming feel awkward. It was not strange for the North District to know that the ruler of the East District was White Yiksha, but it sounded like they respected White Yiksha. But it was also true. Although White Yiksha was very casual in front of Wuming and the others like a problematic child, he was still a demon lord with a 2-digit number. Usually, he was a very dignified existence to the outside world. Moreover, the ruler of the East District was the guardian that protected the people of the lower class. Naturally, he would be respected. However, if they knew that White Yiksha's true face was actually a problematic child, their belief would probably collapse. At this moment, Wuming suddenly heard a more useful information. Speaking of which, I seem to have seen Lord White Yiksha's figure enter Salamandra's base. White Yiksha is also in Salamandra. Wuming laughed. His laughter became more and more miserable. A thought called causing trouble lingered in Wuming's mind. Looking at Wuming's smile, Ren, who was already extremely worried, became even more worried. I shouldn't have let the Villo accompany me. Instead, I should have let him walk around alone. Ren could not help but speak his mind. However, how could this escape Wuming's eyes and ears? Don't worry, the face that No Name lost today when Salamandra unilaterally abandoned the contract, I will take it back in double, leader. Wuming emphasized the word leader, which made Ren stunned. After pausing for a few seconds, Ren nodded emotionally. Thank you very much, Mr. Villo. Please help me regain the face of No Name, please. Ren bowed to Wuming. Although Ren had always valued peace, he was not a person who would not fight back when he was bullied. In the past, they didn't fight back because they didn't have the strength. But now, the community had taken in a new powerful partner. Since he wasn't strong enough, he had to know how to rely on his companions and trust them. It was because Renjin believed that his partner would return one day that he and Black Rabbit worked tirelessly to protect their no-name community. And those partners who left, compared to Letitia who had already returned, believed that the remaining members of the community would protect this home. Wuming suddenly grabbed Ren's arm and lifted his body. How can I let the leader bow to a member, especially in this kind of environment? Wuming said as he casually looked at the people of Salamandra, who had a fierce look on their faces. Ren also reacted. Ren, you have to remember, you are the leader of the community. You can't do what you did today again. Wuming warned Ren seriously. Yes, I understand, Mr. Villo. Ren straightened his spine and responded firmly. Then, Wuming's face instantly turned into a casual smile. However, you still have a long way to go. Do your best, Leader Ren. Wuming smiled and patted Ren's shoulder. Then, he looked at the people of Salamandra. What, you're not going to attack? Wuming smiled again. This smile scared the young man who was the first to have his weapon broken by Wuming's strange method and made him retreat. The others also looked nervous. It seemed that the other party knew that their weapons were broken after Wuming's strange smile. Needless to say, it must have been the young man who told them. It was also because of their vigilance that this group of people didn't attack Wuming rashly. This allowed Wuming and Ren to have a rare opportunity to talk while surrounded by people. This was a rare experience, there wouldn't be a next time. Isn't Salamandra famous for ganging up on people? But today, I've seen the hospitality of Salamandra. Wuming smiled lightly. However, this smile coupled with this sentence was really ridiculing. This made the people of Salamandra grit their teeth. Their faces that were originally red because of the fire dragon's blood turned red once again. However, Wuming's words reminded them that Salamandra's tactics were group battles. There was no such thing as a one-on-one duel. Therefore, they were no longer polite. Everyone, attack together. Let him see the power of Salamandra. Among them, the young man who had his weapon broken by Wuming's telekinesis changed his weapon and pointed it at Wuming. In his opinion, Wuming's ability definitely couldn't be used on so many people. Moreover, they were a community that was good at group battles. Therefore, attacking together was the best choice. Oh, oh, oh. The people of Salamandra roared, cheering themselves on. However, when this group of people was about to rush up and attack Wuming, Wuming closed his eyes. Looks like I'll have to teach you guys what it means to have a person stronger than you. Following that, Wuming suddenly opened his eyes. In an instant, an invisible pressure engulfed the surroundings. They couldn't move. Although that was the case, their bodies were trembling instinctively. A pair of golden vertical pupils were engraved in the hearts of every Salamandra member present. At the same time, the fear of Wuming was also engraved in their hearts. Because of Wuming's precise manipulation, the passers-by and Ren were not affected at all. In their opinion, it was just that Salamandra members had stopped immediately after moving. What happened? I don't know. Why did Salamandra stop fighting? Could it be that they were scared stiff? How could that be? The two people that they surrounded didn't do anything. What the hell is this? However, it wasn't that everyone didn't have the insight. I think I saw that man close his eyes and then open them again. The members of Salamandra stopped moving the moment he opened his eyes. Really? You didn't see wrongly, right? Is it really as scary as you say? It can't be some kind of powerful gift, right? Because these passers-by didn't dare to get too close to Salamandra encircling Wuming and Ren, they didn't see the change in Wuming's eyes. At this time, a lazy but familiar voice came from Salamandra's main door, Wuming. It ends here, kid. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.